Chapter 1061. Body of the Dragon King. Level 7, Spiritual Fire. Wu Zun Realm, Level 4. At this moment, his physical body, flames, and vital essence all broke through at the same time. Tianyang instantly felt a torrential flood of energy coming from his limbs and bones, filling his entire body. Everything from before seemed to be far away. Great desolation, Divine Hound. At this moment, he was no longer an opponent. Long Tianqing? If he did it again, Tianyang would not even need to make a few moves to kill him. Lin Tianchong? To deal with him now, Tianyang did not even need to use the illusory Demon Ancient Book. He could directly smash him into pieces with a punch. Years of accumulation, erupting in one day, Tianyang sighed. It had been several years since he refined the ancestral dragon body. He did not know how much Dragon Clan blood essence he had devoured and how many Dragon Clan inheritances he had obtained. Although the majority of the energy had fused with the ancestral dragon body and become a part of it, it was still not enough. But there was still a considerable amount of it accumulated in his body. At this moment, under the refinement of the true flames of destruction and the true dragon heart fire, the remaining medicinal power suddenly erupted. Together with Song Long's Sky Tyrant Pill, it merged into the ancestral dragon body and became the current body of the Dragon King. At this moment, Tianyang's 9 refined dragon body was no longer created by the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun. Instead, it was the great Tao that he had walked on himself. I don't know what the 7th refinement of the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun is like. However, the 7th refinement is equivalent to the peak of Wu Zun. I'm afraid that even a half-saint can't touch the 8th refinement. The 9th refinement is probably at the saint realm or above. Tianyang sighed. Only the first 5 refinements of the 9 refined dragon body that the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun left behind were complete cultivation techniques that could be used to cultivate. From the 6th refinement onwards, it was extremely vague. After the 7th refinement, there was nothing. It was all up to Tianyang to guess and explore cultivation. But it was undeniable. The 9 refined dragon body itself might not be strong, but that train of thought was extremely clear and smooth. Tianyang had a feeling. Although the 9 refined dragon body was only a heaven-ranked martial skill, it was only targeted at the first 5 refinements. If he could successfully cultivate the 9 refined dragon body, then his dragon body would have reached the holy martial realm. In fact, he was even stronger. However, I've just completed the 7th refinement and haven't consolidated it yet. There's no point in thinking too much about it. Tianyang shook his head and smiled. Then he sank in his thoughts. The divine desolate heaven spirit art circulated at a steady pace. The surrounding fire attribute heaven and earth spirit qi seemed to be attracted by a magnet as it surged towards the Tianyang. It wasn't just the body of the Dragon King. Even Wu Zun's cultivation at the 4th level of the spirit realm, the level 7 spirit fire, and the true flames of destruction were constantly strengthening and consolidating. That fluctuation from before, 10,000 li away from the crater where Tianyang was located. The 2 old men were shocked. Wu Zun, 4th stage of the martial realm. We're already close to the interior of the heaven-burning fire vein. How could there still be a 4th level Wu Zun? Even if we were at the 6th level of the martial realm, it would still be extremely difficult for us to enter. An old man's face was filled with shock. Close to the interior of the heaven-burning fire vein, the heaven and earth spirit qi had already reached the extent that it could burn their skin. Even if they were at the 6th level of the martial realm, it would be extremely difficult for them to stay in the heaven-burning fire vein for a long time. After all, the heaven-burning fire vein was a holy land for cultivation. However, it was also a dangerous place. The center of the heaven-burning fire vein was a place that even Saint Stage experts were not willing to easily touch. The slightest carelessness, even a saint could fall from such a fate. However, if it's just a fluctuation, then it's fine. At this moment, the other old man spoke in a sinister voice. Wu Zun, 4th level of the martial realm. Maybe he's just a person who entered by mistake. And in our intelligence, the only person who might break through to the fourth level of the martial realm in the heaven-burning fire vein is the one young master asked us to kill, Dan Sinaville, Yang Tian. In the next moment, the two of them did not hesitate. They directly circulated their true essence and charged in the direction of Tianyang. Even Tianyang did not expect that the medicine god sect would have two Wu Zun at the sixth level of the martial realm who were training in the heaven-burning fire vein. However, the people of the medicine god sect would not expect it either. In this heaven-burning fire vein, Tianyang's strength had increased to what extent? In the crater of the volcano, Tianyang slowly opened his eyes. The heaven and earth spirit chi around him had become extremely thin. The endless spirit sea required too much heaven and earth spirit chi. It was so huge that Tianyang had almost swallowed the magma in the crater into clear water. But there was no way to fill the endless spirit sea by 1%. There's still a long way to go. Tianyang sighed. Strength and effort had always been proportional. The endless spirit sea was incomparably powerful. It gave Tianyang an almost endless amount of true essence, allowing him to use any martial technique at will. Even martial techniques like 10,000 swords to origin, single sword flying immortal, piercing heaven and earth, and 9 barren swords could be used as long as Tianyang had enough time. However, it also gave Tianyang a terrifying speed of improvement that could drive anyone crazy. Unless one had the help of various fortuitous encounters, an ordinary person would not be able to break through from the third level of the Wu Zun realm to the fourth level of the Wu Zun realm even after hundreds of years, not to mention reaching the Saint realm. The difficulty of this was enough to make any prodigy of the sage sex shrink back. However, Tianyang was different. He had innately terminated meridians, and this was the only path that could lead him to the peak of martial arts. Even if there were thorns everywhere and danger everywhere, Tianyang would still walk forward unswervingly. I just consolidated a little, and 2 little ants came running over. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly raised his eyebrows and revealed a faint smile. Then, his figure disappeared into the crater of the volcano. The power of the flames here has reached a terrifying level. Is this really a place that Yang Tian can set foot in? An elder of the medicine god sect frowned. This place was already very close to the inner area of the sky-scorching fire vein. In fact, it was already in the inner area. Even they did not dare to stay here for long, let alone Yang Tian, who was at the peak of the third level of the Wu Zun realm. This is where I sensed it. Perhaps it's not Yang Tian, but another prodigy. To be able to come here with the cultivation of the fourth level of the Wu Zun realm, this prodigy is worth making friends with. Another elder smiled. In short, we were right to come here. Moreover, the closer we get to the inner area, the more sky-scorching fire crystals there are. We've already helped the young master find a lot of sky-scorching fire crystals along the way. This time, the young master will definitely be first. Oh, thank you very much. At this moment, a clear laugh came from above. Hearing this, the 2 elders of the medicine god sect immediately changed their expressions and hurriedly looked up. A young man was walking in the air toward them. It's you, Yang Tian. With Yi Yuan's description, the 2 elders of the medicine god sect instantly recognized Tianyang. One of them directly rose into the air and charged toward Tianyang. Die for the young master. Oh, someone from the medicine god sect? Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Then there's no need to waste time talking. Tianyang took a step forward. He stomped down. Boom! The elder of the medicine god sect rushed into the air. In an instant, he was kicked. Chapter 1062. Wu Zun, the 14th elder of the medicine god sect. He was crushed by a single stomp. The meat paste flew into the air. Even the bones were turned into invisible particles that merged with the meat paste and flew in all directions. An elder of the medicine god sect. At this moment, he couldn't even leave an intact corpse. Everything around him seemed to have darkened. In the entire world, only Tianyang reigned supreme. That's all you've got? Tianyang raised an eyebrow. revealing a trace of surprise. This person from the Medicine God sect was a little frighteningly weak. He hadn't even used his full strength, but this guy was already turned into meat paste. You? Hearing this, the other elder almost went mad with anger. He stomped their elder to death with a single stomp. Then he thought that the other party was too weak. That was too much. However, Tianyang's strength made the elder of the Medicine God sect not dare to say those words. Tianyang's strength. Indeed, it was enough to say those words. The 14th elder of the Medicine God sect. In front of Tianyang, he was too weak. Anger, resentment, jealousy, and all kinds of negative emotions welled up in the elder's heart. However, in front of Tianyang, he didn't dare to say a single word. If he revealed even the slightest bit of it, he had no doubt that Heavenly Son would immediately take action. Just like how he had crushed the Medicine God sect's 14th elder, he would be crushed to death. That kind of terrifying strength made people despair. Moreover, the elder of the Medicine God sect clearly sensed that Tianyang's cultivation was only at Wu Zun's 4th stage. Wu Zun's 4th stage cultivation was as easy as taking a stroll in the park. 2 6th-stage Wu Zuns were beaten to the point that they couldn't even fight back. What kind of prodigy was this? What about me? Tianyang smiled slightly, revealing a trace of indifference. With a casual wave of his hand, the space bag that he had specially saved appeared in his hand. Tianyang was too lazy to look at the Earth Reiki, even though he had successfully used up all of his Reiki during this breakthrough. However, Tianyang didn't really care about the things that he could get back after killing a few people. He had offended too many people. As a result, the Child of Wealth was also known as the Child of Wealth. There are actually more than 20 heaven-burning fire crystals. At this moment, Tianyang raised his eyebrows, revealing a trace of surprise. The rarity of the heaven-burning fire crystal had already been explained in detail earlier. Even if one traversed tens of thousands of miles of the burning heaven fire vein, it would still be difficult to find one. However, this 6th-stage Medicine God sect elder, Wu Zun, had obtained more than 20 of them. Could it be that this guy didn't need to cultivate and risk his life every day to search for the heaven-burning fire crystal? The Medicine God sect is indeed extraordinary, Tianyang said with a light laugh. With these over 20 heaven-burning fire crystals, this final round should be stable. Hearing this, the Medicine God sect elder's face twitched slightly. There's still someone from the Medicine God sect in front of you. However, the Medicine God sect elder still didn't dare to say a word. He was afraid that Tianyang would suddenly attack. Take his life. This prodigy. Tianyang stood quietly on the spot, as if he was tidying up his spoils of war. He packed for a long time. This time, it was so long that the Medicine God sect elder couldn't hold back anymore. If it was under normal circumstances, the Medicine God sect elder would have no problem waiting for half a year. But now, Tianyang could sever his head from his body at any time, and he would die in this world forever. Every minute and every second felt like years to the Medicine God sect elder. After less than 10 minutes, the Medicine God sect elder finally couldn't hold back anymore. I just happened to be following. Do you know why I've let you live until now? At this moment, Tianyang suddenly spoke, interrupting the Medicine God sect elder's words. Hearing this, the Medicine God sect elder was stunned. At this moment, Tianyang smiled slightly. If I didn't let you live until now, how could I perfectly devour your memories? What? Have you found Yi Yuan's location? Hearing this, the Medicine God sect elder's expression changed drastically. He no longer hesitated and rushed toward the back. From the fact that they were willing to risk their lives for Yi Yuan, it was obvious that Yi Yuan was more important to them than themselves, and Yi Yuan's strength was far inferior to theirs. Tianyang could even crush Wu Zun, who was in the 6th stage, with a single stomp, let alone Yi Yuan. If you could run, you would have done so long ago. At this moment, Tianyang chuckled. In a flash, he unleashed his extreme speed and arrived in front of the Medicine God sect elder. Then, he casually threw a punch. Boom! A bowl-sized hole appeared in the Medicine God sect elder's chest, and blood spurted out. You, Blood flowed from the medicine god sect elder's mouth and nose. His face was filled with resentment. Just as he spat out 2 words, Tianyang flicked his finger. A black vortex appeared in the depths of the medicine god sect elder's primordial spirit. Everything about the medicine god sect elder was ground to dust. So it's not just Yi Yuan. All the disciples of the major factions collect sky-burning fire crystals like this? Tianyang raised his eyebrows. The information in the medicine god sect elder's head was a little explosive. However, Tianyang could not be bothered. There are more than 20 over there, and more than 10 over here. Although there are some fire crystals that have not been identified, there are still more than 30 of them. Not bad, not bad. Tianyang chuckled. The sky-burning fire crystals were not only useful as mission items. It was not bad to keep them for himself. If he could fuse them into the Xianming fire cauldron in the future, the cauldron's grade would definitely rise to another level. Found it. Yi Yuan, about 39,498 li northeast of here. Less than 100 li away? Not bad, not bad. Tianyang chuckled. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and a faint light flickered in his eyes. In the next moment, he disappeared on the spot. He rushed toward the northeast, east of the sky-burning fire vein. The sky-burning fire vein was incomparably huge. Although it was only a mountain range, it stretched for hundreds of thousands of miles. Therefore, although the remaining 721 people all set off from the same place, they were scattered to various parts of the sky-burning fire vein. It would probably be difficult for them to meet even once until the end. This was the reason why Yi Yuan did not do it himself, but let the medicine god sect elders do it. He still had to collect sky-burning fire crystals. As for protection, Yi Yuan had never thought of it. In his opinion, Tianyang was only at the peak of the 3rd level of Wuzun realm. He, who was at the peak of the 5th level of Wuzun realm, could crush him with a finger. With 2 elders at the 6th level of Wuzun realm making a move, killing Yang Tian was a simple matter. Estimating the time, the 2 elders should have succeeded in killing Yang Tian by now. Yi Yuan raised his head, looked at the sky, and muttered to himself. Now, 4 or 5 days had passed since the start of the 2nd round. 4 or 5 days, no matter how huge the sky-burning fire vein was, it was very easy for a cultivator at the 6th level of Wuzun realm to find a person. Once Yang Tian dies, the divine pill will be refined by me. The dead tell no tales. Even little Princess Tang can't overthrow me. The person who successfully stepped into the Bantan Simyun and observed the myriad pill sacred canon is also me. Yi Yuan smiled sinisterly. At this time, a light laughter suddenly sounded. If I kill you, does it mean that there will be no evidence? Yi Yuan raised his head to look. Under the moonlight, a youth sat cross-legged on a broadsword, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, looking at Yi Yuan. Seeing this, Yi Yuan, his expression changed dramatically. Chapter 1063. Yang Tian. Yi Yuan swallowed hard and stared at Tianyang in disbelief. What was going on? Shouldn't Tianyang have been killed by the 2 Wuzun realm's 6th-stage medicine god sect elders? At the very least, he should be on the run. How could he appear in front of him now? How could you be here? Yi Yuan roared madly, his face filled with disbelief. Could it be that the 2 medicine god sect elders didn't notice him? Instead, they let him find his way here? How is that possible? The medicine god sect was an alchemy faction. Their elders might not be weak in martial arts, but their alchemy and primordial spirit were definitely not weak. The 2 Wuzun realm 6th-stage medicine god sect elders had searched almost half of the sky-scorching fire vein's perimeter in 4 to 5 days. How could they have given Tianyang a chance to escape? However, Tianyang had actually appeared here. From the looks of it, he didn't seem to be injured at all. Either Tianyang had used all sorts of inconceivable methods to escape the pursuit of the 2 Wuzun realm 6th-stage medicine god sect elders and appear in front of him, or Tianyang had killed both of them. There was no other possibility. Where are the 2 elders of the medicine god sect? Where are the 14th and 18th elders? Where did they go? Although Yi Yuan already had his suspicions, he still roared. He didn't believe it. Even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't believe that Tianyang could kill the two Wuzun realm's 6-stage medicine god sect elders. The 14th and 18th elders? Oh, so that's their ranking. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a bright smile. They've gone on their way. Why don't you go accompany them? Tianyang laughed. Yi Yuan's expression changed drastically, but he reacted in the next moment. A cold smile appeared on his face. I know. You're just trying to trick me. Your strength is only at the peak of the 3rd level of the Wuzun realm. Even if you knew that someone was coming to kill you, you wouldn't have been able to escape. In other words, you're still being chased, and you found me by chance. Then, you pretended to be mysterious and tried to capture me so that you could use me as a bargaining chip to negotiate with the 14th elder and the 18th elder to escape. Yi Yuan's face flickered with the light of wisdom as he concluded. Hearing this, Tianyang was slightly stunned. What the hell? This guy's imagination was a little wild. However, your wishful thinking is wrong. Even though I specialize in the Tao of alchemy and my strength in the martial Tao isn't strong, I still possess a cultivation at the peak of the 5th level of the Wuzun realm. Wuzun, you're only at the peak of the 3rd stage of the realm. So what if you're strong? Since 14th elder and the others didn't kill you, let me kill you. Yi Yuan sneered. In the next moment, Wuzun released his true origin at the peak of the 5th level of the realm. A long spear condensed from primordial spirit energy suddenly appeared between his hands. Holding the long spear, he charged wildly at Tianyang. Spirit Annihilation Strike. Yi Yuan roared. The primordial spirit spear in his hand released rays of light and charged violently at Tianyang. Rays of primordial spirit energy shot out in all directions like extremely strong lightning. Among them, the most central and strongest ray instantly arrived in front of Tianyang. Die! A triumphant smile appeared on Yi Yuan's face. He seemed to see his primordial spirit lightning directly penetrating between Tianyang's eyebrows and shattering his primordial spirit. His expression froze into one of utter terror. Trash won't do. At this moment, Tianyang shook his head and stretched out his hand. A faint aura of dragon power wrapped around his hands. A dragon pattern appeared on his fingers. Then, he pointed his finger. Roar! A heaven-shaking dragon roar suddenly erupted. It pierced through the sky. An extremely strong finger light also pierced through space. With a speed that far exceeded Yi Yuan's primordial spirit spear, it arrived in front of the primordial spirit lightning. In just an instant, boom! An incomparably intense collision erupted. Primordial spirit energy and dragon power splattered in all directions. The surrounding mountain rocks were even shattered by the aftermath. The surrounding incomparably abundant fire attribute heaven and earth spiritual energy also surged at this moment. Boom! There was another loud bang. However, at this moment, Yi Yuan's expression suddenly froze. His primordial spirit lightning had been broken. Like a giant hammer smashing tofu, it broke without any resistance. That finger light directly crushed Yi Yuan's primordial spirit lightning and charged towards Yi Yuan himself. How is this possible? Yi Yuan's pupils constricted to the size of a needle tip as he looked at the finger light in disbelief. Strong. Too strong. It was as if this finger could kill him. Myriad Pill, Sacred Order. At this moment, Yi Yuan roared, and the Myriad Pill Sacred Order in his hand suddenly exploded. At this moment, 10% of the Dragon Mountain Elder strength was also released. It turned into an incomparably sturdy shield and blocked in front of Yi Yuan. There's still such a move? Tianyang raised his eyebrows and frowned slightly. However, he recovered in an instant. The Dragon Mountain Elder, a half-step saint, 10% of his strength was like the hardest turtle shell, extremely difficult to break through. If he were to fight head-on, he might not be able to break through 10% of this half-step saint's defense until the end. Ha ha! You must be dumbfounded. I have the Myriad Pill Sacred Order to protect me. At this moment, Yi Yuan also laughed crazily. The myriad pill sacred order was indeed worthy of being the life-saving talisman that the Dragon Mountain Elder was extremely confident in. Even someone as strong as Tianyang was unable to break through it. Do you think that this turtle shell can protect you for the rest of your life? At this moment, a strange light flashed across Tianyang's eyes as he laughed. It's impossible for the rest of my life, but it's more than enough to protect the second round. Yi Yuan, whose life was unharmed and fearless, also laughed wildly. Ha, I know that you're very strong, but my medicine god sect is even stronger. You dared to attack me and kill 2 elders of my medicine god sect. After the myriad pill ceremony is over, you and everything behind you will die. Yi Yuan laughed wildly. It's useless to kneel now. You're dead meat. Seeing this, Tianyang could not help but shake his head. He stretched out his right hand. A ball of flame suddenly appeared in the center of his palm. It was still as pitch black as before. However, it was even stronger than before. Do you know where this place is? Tianyang smiled slightly. Hearing this, Yi Yuan laughed coldly. The sky-scorching fire vein. I know this place better than you, a country bumpkin from Dancineville. Then you should also know that a spiritual fire like the heavenly ice flame can't unleash much power in the sky-scorching fire vein. And the ferocious and explosive spiritual fire can erupt with boundless power here. Tianyang smiled faintly. Hearing this, Yi Yuan laughed coldly. No matter how strong it is, it can't break through my defense. There's no need to break it. Tianyang shook his head. In the next moment, the true flames of destruction was suddenly released. The terrifying pressure of a level 7 spiritual fire erupted. Within Yi Yuan's defense, streams of fire attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly turned into flames and enveloped Yi Yuan. Chapter 1064. Inside the defensive shield formed by the myriad pill sacred order. Every strand of heaven and earth spiritual chi transformed into a flame. Countless flames fused together to form a terrifying flame that was enough to make any cultivator below the Wuzun realm tremble in fear. The Dragon Mountain Elder's 10% defense could block attacks. However, it wouldn't block the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. I'll give you some heaven and earth spiritual chi. Tianyang smiled. He used the true flames of destruction with his right hand and void engraving with his left, forming an array with bare hands. In the blink of an eye, a low-grade spirit gathering array was attracted by Tianyang. The surrounding fire attribute heaven and earth spiritual chi surrounded the two of them like mountains and seas. In order to find more heaven-burning fire crystals and seize the first place, Yi Yuan took a risk and came to this place near the inner area. Indeed, they found many heaven-burning fire crystals. However, he also found the incomparably terrifying fire attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth. If it was any other time, Yi Yuan would have wished for as much heaven and earth spirit chi as possible. But now, he wished that there was no such thing as heaven and earth spirit chi in the world. The fire attribute spiritual energy was crazily gathering. It was as if a death warrant had been issued by the underworld. Heavenly frost, ice flame. At this moment, Yi Yuan finally let out a wild roar. The rank 7 spirit fire, heavenly frost, ice flame, attacked. He did not dare to break the defense of the myriad Dan sacred order. Once it was broken, then Tianyang would not even need to use the spiritual fire to kill him. Now, he could only use his heavenly frigid ice flame to resist these flames within the myriad pill sacred order. After all, it wasn't a real spiritual flame. It was just a flame that was summoned by the spiritual flame. No matter how weak the heavenly ice flame was, it was still impossible. Just as Yi Yuan was thinking this, the corners of Tianyang's mouth twitched slightly. Have you heard of heart fire? What? Hearing this, Yi Yuan was slightly taken aback. What heart fire? That is, a fire that can be ignited in the heart. Within the true flames of destruction, the part that belonged to the true dragon heart fire instantly blossomed with light that filled the sky. Yi Yuan was not the only one. The heaven and earth spirit chi around him had completely turned into raging flames. In Yi Yuan's heart, a spiritual fire that resembled a fire dragon suddenly appeared, burning his organs. Ah! Yi Yuan howled, his face instantly distorted from the pain. The heavenly ice flame had just been summoned, but it was immediately extinguished by the terrifying flames. The true Dragon Heart Flame wasn't just a fusion of the Dragon Saint Force and Fire Force. If that was the case, it wouldn't be worthy of a Peak 6 class spiritual fire. The strongest point of the true Dragon Heart Flame was a special characteristic. A flame was ignited in his heart. For himself, he could control the burning of his heart's blood and erupt with even more terrifying strength. As for others, it was possible to catch them off guard and kill them off guard. Damn it! In the end, Yi Yuan was still a peak grade 7 alchemist at the peak of the 5th stage Wuzun realm. The strength of his primordial spirit was extremely powerful. However, in an instant, Yi Yuan forcefully suppressed the pain and howled. Yi Yuan's eyes widened and his face turned bloodshot. The next moment, an icy blue flame ignited on Yi Yuan's body. Heavenly frost. Tianyang casually snapped his fingers, and the true Dragon Heart Flame erupted once again. Combined with the surrounding spirit convergence array that was crazily gathering and igniting the fire attribute spirit chi of heaven and earth, the internal and external attacks interrupted Yi Yuan's summoning once again. At this time, without the addition of any follow-up power, the Myriad Pills Sacred Token finally couldn't hold on any longer. The Myriad Pills Sacred Token was equivalent to a key to opening the treasure vault. The treasures in the treasure vault were 10% of the Dragon Mountain Elder's strength. However, treasures would be consumed. If Yi Yuan continued to supply the treasury with primeval essence, then this powerful defensive shield would naturally not break. Unless the Dragon Mountain Elder consumed 10% of his strength, it would be impossible for it to dissipate on its own. But now, how could Yi Yuan provide true essence to the barrier? And with the true essence that the Dragon Mountain Elder had left in the Myriad Pills Sacred Token, it wouldn't be able to maintain the barrier for long. Crack! Under Yi Yuan's despairing gaze, the barrier broke. Let's go. Tianyang smiled slightly. The spirit convergence array was instantly overloaded. The surrounding heaven and earth spiritual chi seemed to have gone crazy as it rushed toward this place. At the moment when the spirit gathering array was overloaded to the point of bursting, the surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth had also reached its peak. The raging fire burned the horizon. Ah! Yi Yuan immediately roared. The true Dragon Heart fire had been forcefully expelled out of his body. After all, he was a 7th grade alchemist. He still had the ability to do so. However, he was completely powerless against the flames of heaven and earth around him. Master, save me. Meanwhile, Yi Yuan roared once more. Immediately after, a terrifying force was suddenly released from Yi Yuan's body. In terms of pressure, he was inferior to the Dragon Mountain Elder. However, in terms of numbers, they were many times stronger than the Dragon Mountain Elder. This aura, Tianyang narrowed his eyes. Peak Wuzun. Who dares to kill my disciple? At this moment, a muffled, thunder-like sound rang out from all directions. That pressure instantly extinguished the flames of heaven and earth. It's Yang Tian. At this moment, Yi Yuan endured the pain and roared bitterly. That voice moved slightly. Yang Tian? Wasn't this the person who knew that the one refining the divine pill was Yi Yuan, but still shamelessly bribed the people around to slander Yi Yuan? Who would have thought that he actually dared to attack Yi Yuan in the burning heaven fire vein? I didn't expect that there would be such a shameless person in this world. Peak Wuzun snorted coldly. In the next moment, a terrifying force rushed toward Tianyang. A cold light flashed in Tianyang's eyes, and the great void sword embryo instantly appeared in his hand. Sky sword appear. One sword to sweep the world. Sky sword art. 4th sword firmament. In an instant, that force was cut apart by Tianyang like tofu. However, The remaining shockwaves still made Tianyang's expression change slightly, and he took a few steps back. Your strength is not bad. At this moment, Peak Wu Zun said indifferently. However, your character is too bad. Since you dared to attack my disciple, you should be prepared to be killed by me. In the next moment, an incomparably terrifying aura condensed on Yi Yuan's body. At this moment, Yi Yuan looked at Tianyang with a maniacal smile on his face. Ha ha ha. No matter how strong you are, can you be stronger than Peak Wu Zun, who asked you to be so dismissive and leave too early 3 months ago? Now, the person who should be your backer is helping me to kill you. Ignorant child, die for me. Pill suppresses the heavens. Peak Wu Zun's power condensed, and a huge pill cauldron suddenly appeared. Chapter 1065. Pill suppresses the heavens. A deep roar suddenly rang out from all directions. A huge cauldron, with a terrifying aura that could sweep across the world, came crashing down on Tianyang. Even though the power of Wu Zun in Yi Yuan's body was far from the full power of Wu Zun at his peak. However, if Tianyang was hit by this attack, he would definitely be suppressed by the cauldron and would never be able to reincarnate. The cauldron was not only used for refining pills. The cauldron itself had the power to suppress. Your Wu Zun at his peak, Tianyang chuckled, and the great void sword embryo in his hand emitted rays of dazzling sword light, attacking without distinguishing between right and wrong. In the next moment, Tianyang slashed with his sword. Universal annihilation. You're living like an idiot. How dare you? Hearing this, Wu Zun at his peak was instantly enraged to the extreme. Since what did a mere stage for Wu Zun dare to speak to him like this? If this news spread, the countless elders in Banten Simeon who were eyeing his current position would laugh their heads off. They might even use this as an excuse to kick him out. Of course, the most important thing was, Tianyang dared to insult him. Die! Wu Zun at his peak roared, and in the next moment, rays of terrifying true origin were released. It gathered above the pill cauldron and collided violently with the sky suns, piercing heaven and earth obliteration. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The surrounding space exploded, and within 10 miles, the spirit Qi turned into a storm, turning living creatures into ashes. The spirit Qi of heaven and earth turned into a raging fire, without Tianyang's need to ignite it. The collision of Saint paths was enough to shake heaven and earth. Saint Martial? Wu Zun at his peak was not trash like Yi Yuan. There was a real saint in Banten Simeon. Although the sage might not be seen even once in a few hundred years, Peak Wu Zun knew very well what a sage looked like. Wu Zun, who was only at the 4th level of the saint realm, had executed a strike that contained the Saint Dao. In other words, this sword was a sacred martial art. The saint martial arts that countless people dreamed of, but were unable to obtain. He's so young, but he has a sacred martial saint. Wu Zun's tone changed slightly. Deep in his words, there was a hint of greed. The saint martial art was a saint martial art. Even Wu Zun, who was at his peak, coveted such an existence. Even though Wu Zun at his peak did not practice the way of the sword. If he could obtain this sacred martial art from Tianyang, it would still be extremely useful. Disciple, preserve this person's soul in a moment and send it to me. If you can keep the sacred martial school here, I will reward you handsomely. The peak martial honorable exclaimed in joy. Hearing this, Yi Yuan also nodded. Greed could be seen in his eyes. Sacred martial art. Countless Wu Zun dreamed of obtaining it. Even some half-saints did not possess such a powerful martial art technique. If it appeared in the Eastern Sky Divine Prefecture, it would definitely set off a bloodbath. If it appeared in one person's body, then that person would become the target of public criticism. Far away, Peak Wu Zun was still secretly delighted. He was the first person to know that Tianyang had a sacred martial art. In other words, this sacred martial art would definitely belong to him. First, think about whether or not your disciple will be able to survive. Tianyang smiled slightly, as if he did not care about the situation where the heavens and earth above him were being suppressed by Danzhun's imperial heaven. Is this the arrogance before death? Peak Wuzun smiled disdainfully. At this moment, Tianyong moved again. The great void, sword embryo in his hand, suddenly released rays of Xingguang. Sacred nine-colored light shone on the great void sword embryo. At the same time, the surging and tyrannical dragon power poured into the great void sword embryo like a river. Sky Cloud sword out. Martial soul talent, sky devouring. Tianyong shouted in a low voice. Like a whirlpool at the bottom of the sea or a black hole in the starry sky, the devouring power burst out from Tianyong's body. The sky-burning fire vein was originally a place with abundant spiritual qi of heaven and earth. For cultivators who had spiritual fire, it was a supreme place for cultivation. If it was in a battle, it was the best place to fight on the home ground. The raging flames formed by the spiritual qi of heaven and earth all gathered together at this moment, turning into a turbulent torrent that rushed into Tianyong's body. Tianyong's aura also soared at this moment. Yes, it was difficult to fill the endless spiritual sea, so the sky-devouring secret skill did not have much effect after Wuzun reached the realm. However, it was difficult in a relative sense. It was not so difficult for the Sky Cloud Sword, which was close to the divine grade martial soul, to fill it and break through the realm. Wuzun, LV4 the realm. Wuzun, peak of LV4 the realm. Wuzun, LV5 of the realm. Wuzun, peak of LV5 of the realm. In a few breaths, Tianyong's aura suddenly rose to a terrifying level. It made the mountains and rivers tremble, and made the people bow down and worship. Sky devouring heaven and earth. How is this possible? Yi Yuan's pupils instantly shrank to the size of a needle tip. How is this possible? Why is Tianyong so strong? Why does he have such a terrifying secret skill? From Wuzun, LV4 of the realm, to Wuzun, peak of LV5 of the realm. The gap between them was not something a simple secret skill could make up for. Even the sage sects of the Eastern Sky Divine Land, or even the Emperor clans and Imperial clans of the Central Divine Land, might not have such a terrifying secret skill inheritance. What's wrong? Because of the distance, Wuzun, who was at the peak of LV5 of the realm, could not immediately sense the changes in Tianyong's body. He could only guess Tianyong's situation from Yi Yuan's reaction. Yi Yuan's voice began to tremble slightly. At this time, Tianyong was too lazy to pay attention to Yi Yuan. He looked at the sky and broke through the piercing heaven and earth, and fiercely fell to the pill-suppressing imperial sky. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This strength awesome. In the next moment, a dazzling nine-colored light condensed on the great void sword embryo. Terrifying power gathered on the sword, and mysterious colors flashed in Tianyong's eyes. That was the simplest Dao rhyme, the true essence of Sword Dao. This was sword breaking 9 desolates. Tianyong roared and slashed out with his sword. The surrounding space seemed to have stopped. Simple, domineering, with infinite power and speed. It was so fast that the space did not have time to tremble, so fast that Wuzun could not react in time. Crack! Boom! The sword faced the sky and broke the cauldron. Pill-suppressing imperial sky shattered. The sword wind swept out, shattering all of Wuzun's power in Yi Yuan's body. What happened? Before Wuzun's voice could finish, it completely disappeared. At this time, Tianyong smiled slightly and looked at Yi Yuan. You? At this moment, Yi Yuan trembled all over and took a few steps back. He lost his balance and fell on his back. Drops of turbid yellow liquid flowed out from between his legs. I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you. Tianyong casually slashed out with his sword, and the sword light cut off Yi Yuan's head. Chapter 1066. The sword slashed down. The sword light dissipated like smoke and dust. Yi Yuan's primordial spirit also disappeared. That's right, the primordial spirit of an alchemist was extremely tenacious. Under normal circumstances, even if the physical body died, the primordial spirit would not be destroyed. However, under an incomparably terrifying and powerful attack, It would be a joke if the primordial spirit was not destroyed. Tianyang's sword had destroyed the physical body and shattered the primordial spirit. Yi Yuan naturally did not have the slightest chance of survival. His body and soul were completely destroyed. A piece of trash still tormented for so long. Sigh, my heart softened. Tianyang curled his lips and casually took Yi Yuan's space bag. Then, he randomly chose a direction and flew away. Those two medicine god sect elders had probably been looking for him all this time. Collecting sky-burning fire crystals was just a side benefit, so they should not have collected many sky-burning fire crystals. However, Yi Yuan had been collecting sky-burning fire crystals from the beginning. This amount should not be bad. Smack! One Danseineville, in an elegant and gorgeous pavilion. A rather delicate white porcelain cup that was not cheap was directly crushed by the strong grip. The tea inside splashed out and the fragments flew everywhere. However, it could not fly more than 3 inches away from the hand holding the teacup. That large hand was soaked by the green tea, but it still did not move. Blue veins popped out. The hand did not move, but the owner of the hand had already trembled slightly in rage. Arrogant! Arrogant! The words that Wu Zun spat out began to tremble slightly. His face was completely filled with uncontrollable rage. In just a few seconds, he would know what had happened there. Even before he knew what had happened, Wu Zun had transmitted his vital essence across space and greatly strengthened the power of the Imperial Sky. However, it was useless. The Imperial Sky was still broken, and his disciple who could refine divine pills died an unnatural death just like that. I didn't expect that there would still be someone who dares to kill my disciple after I've already made my move. Wu Zun roared at the sky. His uncontrollable rage was released. At that moment, the surrounding people who were tasting the tea all revealed terrified expressions as they looked at the peak martial honorable. There were many powerful cultivators here, but very few were as powerful as Wu Zun at his peak. It was even rarer to see such an existence become so furious. The crowd couldn't help but whisper among themselves. They were discussing why this person was so angry. Yang Tian? Humph! I can't deal with you now during the myriad pills ceremony, but if you dare to step into Bantan Simeon after the ceremony. In that case, I, Changya, will let you know what it means to be at the peak of Wu Zun's fury. Wu Zun growled. Then, he glanced at the tea on the table and snorted. With a wave of his hand, the tea evaporated and disappeared, and the broken white porcelain cup returned to its original state. It was watertight, as if it had never been broken. Wu Zun, on the other hand, casually called the waiter over and ordered another cup of tea. It was as if his anger had disappeared. However, Wu Zun at his peak was quite famous in Danseineville. These people all knew about him. The calmer Wu Zun at his peak was, the more it meant that Wu Zun at his peak was suppressing his anger. He was ready to deal a fatal blow at any time. Not bad. More than 200 sky-burning fire crystals. Looks like this guy isn't a complete idiot. Tianyang counted the treasures in Yi Yuan's space bag. Looking at the nearly 300 sky-burning fire crystals in front of him, he revealed a satisfied smile. 300. Although he might not be able to get first place, entering the top 300 and competing for a spot to observe the myriad pill ceremony was a sure bet. Yi Yuan had worked hard for nearly a week to find so many sky-burning fire crystals. Most of the others weren't as strong as Yi Yuan, so the number of sky-burning fire crystals they could find was naturally greatly reduced. I don't know if I'll have the chance to encounter such good things in the future. I feel like I'm losing out by giving all of them to Bantan Simeon. Tianyang muttered to himself, rubbing his chin with his right hand, revealing a thoughtful expression. Sky-burning fire crystals were a good material for refining pill cauldrons. The lowest grade of pill cauldrons refined with sky-burning fire crystals was 7th grade, which was already close to the Xianming fire cauldron. The Xianming fire cauldron was a mid-grade 7th grade pill cauldron. Now that it had merged with the myriad pill scripture, its quality had increased a lot, reaching high-grade 7th grade. However, this grade of pill cauldron could only be considered above average. Tianyang's alchemy skills had already been cultivated to the strongest realm at the moment. With the myriad phenomenon Tao, there was a trace of confidence that he could refine minor saint grade pills. Then, outside of alchemy skills, he needed to improve everything to the most perfect to expand this trace of chance. Then I can only reluctantly upgrade the Xianming fire cauldron. Tianyang smiled slightly. In the next moment, he waved his right hand, and the 7th grade spiritual fire, true flames of destruction, burned. Spiritual fire was born from the fate of heaven and earth, and its rarity far exceeded that of pill cauldrons made by superhumans. Therefore, using spiritual fire to strengthen pill cauldrons was a feasible path to begin with. Using powerful materials and spiritual fire to strengthen pill cauldrons was even more feasible. However, this is the profession of weapon refinement masters. Tianyang's lips curled up as he muttered to himself with a smile. Tianyang naturally did not know how to refine weapons. Even if he did, he only knew the basics and was countless times worse than weapon refinement masters. However, Tianyang did not need to know how to complete the complicated operation of strengthening pill cauldrons. What he was relying on, of course, the myriad phenomenon Tao. Fuse! Tianyang gave a low shout, and the true flames of destruction enveloped the close to 300 sky-burning fire crystals within. Waves of destructive power erupted from the true flames of destruction, devouring the sky-burning fire crystals. Crack! In just an instant, some sky-burning fire crystals shattered. However, Tianyang's expression did not change as he continued to operate the true flames of destruction. He was not only strengthening pill cauldrons, but also tempering his ability to control the new generation of true flames of destruction. The sky-burning fire crystals could be considered as tuition. Unknowingly, 3 days had already passed. In these 3 days, Tianyang had also destroyed dozens of sky-burning fire crystals. Of the close to 300 precious fire crystals, only 200 were left now. Now, the 200 had all turned into a ball of energy essence. Myriad phenomenon Tao rise. Tianyang gave a low shout, and the myriad phenomenon Tao that he had inherited from the myriad phenomenon Saint erupted. A chaotic light flew out from Tianyang's hands and enveloped the ball of energy essence, as well as the Xianming fire cauldron. The myriad phenomenon Tao was all-encompassing. In the beginning, Tianyang could only combine his 3 saint paths into one and use them freely. However, as Tianyang cultivated, his control of the myriad phenomenon Tao also became stronger and stronger. Now, he had already integrated the myriad phenomenon Tao into everything. Fuse! Tianyang gave a low shout, and the true flames of destruction erupted with shocking light. The sky-burning fire crystals and the Xianming fire cauldron fused into one. Chapter 1067. The violent true flames of destruction burned and released raging flames, enveloping the skyburn fire crystal and the netherworld fire cauldron within. The chaotic colored all-creation light was like a fusion agent, fusing the essence of the skyburn fire crystal and the netherworld fire cauldron together. The netherworld fire cauldron emitted streaks of strange light, as if a hungry wolf that had been starved for many days had found an incomparably delicious lamb. It didn't even need Tianyang to guide it, and automatically swallowed the essence of the skyburn fire crystal into it. Could it be that this netherworld fire cauldron is still broken? Tianyang's brows raised. He had only seen this kind of situation on broken treasures. Only those broken treasures would have the instinct to automatically swallow and absorb energy. However, ever since he had obtained the netherworld fire cauldron, Tianyang had practically never seen this netherworld fire cauldron have any problems. Although its appearance was slightly old, Tianyang had obtained it from an ancient ruin after all, so he didn't care. But he didn't expect that it was actually a broken version. It's just a broken version and already has such power. I wonder how strong the complete version will be. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled, revealing a trace of astonishment. If that was really the case, then it wouldn't be so difficult to use the skyburn fire crystal to raise the quality of the netherworld fire cauldron. With a slight thought, the true flames of destruction also abruptly rose to a terrifying temperature. Even an environment like the Skyburn fire vein was slightly warped by the terrifying temperature of the true flames of destruction. And under the catalysis of the spirit fire, the speed at which the netherworld fire cauldron swallowed the Skyburn fire crystal also became faster and faster. The simple and unadorned pitch-black netherworld fire cauldron seemed to be suffused with a trace of blazing flame color under the chaotic-colored all-creation force. It rapidly disappeared, as if it had escaped into the depths of the netherworld fire cauldron. And as the owner of the netherworld fire cauldron, Tianyang could also feel that the power of the netherworld fire cauldron was rapidly rising. Not bad. This place is already considered the depths. I hope that no monsters that are too strong will appear. Jean Daoping's expression slightly sank as he surveyed the surroundings. The temperature in the depths of the Skyburn fire vein had already reached an unimaginable level. If a mortal were here, their skin would be ignited in less than 3 seconds, and they would burn themselves to death. Even a cultivator would have to circulate all the energy in his body to prevent his body from burning. Even a first-stage Wu Zun cultivator like Jean Daoping could feel the burning sensation. Here, there were actually more than 50 heaven-burning fire crystals. Not a single flame crystal. We've struck it rich. At this moment, Jean Daoping released the power of Essence Soul and looked around. Beside the mouth of the volcano, dozens of heaven-burning fire crystals were shining brightly under the sunlight. Boundless fire attribute energy gathered within. The ones outside are hard to find and easy to be snatched away. It's better to go deeper in. Jean Daoping smiled faintly. In the next moment, he soared into the air and rushed towards the 50 over heaven-burning fire crystals. The power of the primordial spirit suddenly swept out. Immediately, the 50-plus heaven-burning fire crystals landed in his hands. As soon as Jean Daoping put it into his interspatial bag, he sensed a fatal threat. This is... Jean Daoping's expression changed as he looked behind him in disbelief. A huge fireball shot towards him. Oh no! Jean Daoping's expression changed drastically. Wu Zun's first stage vital essence burst out and rushed out of the heaven-burning fire vein. The fireball did not hit Jean Daoping, but smashed into the ground. However, the flames that splashed up still landed on Jean Daoping's back. It instantly ignited the supreme-grade spirit robe. How is this possible? Seeing this, Jean Daoping's expression changed drastically. The aftermath of a single attack could actually destroy a supreme-grade spirit weapon. This was too terrifying. Immediately, Jean Daoping did not hesitate. He threw away the supreme-grade spirit robe and rushed towards the outside world. As for the supreme-grade spirit robe, it was completely occupied by flames the moment Jean Daoping threw it out. It turned into ashes and disappeared between heaven and earth. The creatures in the depths of the heaven-burning fire vein were too terrifying. However, at this moment, another fireball came. It hit Jean Daoping's back. Jean Daoping spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire person was blasted away by this terrifying impact. Fortunately, this fireball was not as powerful as before. It was just a casual move by the caster. Otherwise, Jean Daoping would have already turned into ashes like the supreme-grade spirit robe previously. How can there be such a powerful existence in the depths of this heaven-burning fire vein? Jean Daoping could feel that this attack absolutely had Wu Zun's third-stage strength. If not for the Dance on Evil Holy Tower's quasi-alchemy Emperor Zhonglin giving him a half-sage artifact inner armor, he would have died long ago at this moment. However, this was just a casual attack from the other party. Jean Daoping could not even feel the slightest bit of the caster's essence, energy, and spirit in this attack. Too terrifying. Jean Daoping already had no time to guess what level of existence this was. He swallowed dozens of medicinal pills to recover his injuries and rushed out of the outside world without looking back. This power was too powerful. Fortunately, it did not target him. However, right after Jean Daoping fled, in the depths of the heaven-burning fire vein, where Jean Daoping discovered over 50 heaven-burning fire crystals before. A pair of huge red eyes looked in the direction where Jean Daoping had fled. Subsequently, it dragged its enormous body and walked out of the volcano. Accurately speaking, it was dragging the volcano out. Its body was actually even larger than this volcano. Outer realm, not bad. Tianyang casually beckoned. 3 heaven-burning fire crystals appeared in his hand. In that third stage Wuzun realm, fierce beast guarding the heaven-burning fire crystals could only retreat helplessly when it discovered the terrifying aura of the great void sword embryo in Tianyang's hand. It started croaking angrily on the spot. Tianyang did not care either. He executed the void, treading secret art, and flew towards another direction. Within the range, enveloped by the power of the origin spirit, only the last place had heaven-burning fire crystals. Just as Tianyang was about to obtain the remaining 2 heaven-burning fire crystals, the myriad pill, sacred token hanging at his waist, suddenly released a blazing and dazzling light. Time is up. The second round is over. The Dragon Mountain Elder's voice came from the myriad pill, sacred token. In the next moment, 10% of the Dragon Mountain Elder's power sealed within the myriad pill sacred token automatically flew out and enveloped Tianyang. Then, with a terrifying speed, he flew towards the spatial gate that Danseineville had set up at the edge of the heaven-burning fire vein. And in every corner of the heaven-burning fire vein, apart from those who had died and destroyed the myriad pill sacred token, they all turned into a ball of light and shot towards the teleportation gate. However, dozens of minutes later, Tianyang passed through the teleportation gate and returned to Danseineville. The Elder of Dragon Mountain's turbid gaze swept past him. In the surroundings, millions or even tens of millions of people looked over. Because the myriad pill ceremony had already begun. Chapter 1068. He's actually the first to come out. Seeing Tianyang walk out, Yao Yaoi couldn't help but be stunned. Then, as if thinking of something, a mocking smile appeared on his face. I understand now. So this guy was just wandering around the exit and didn't go deep at all. It's just that the power of the primordial spirit is a little stronger. When it comes to the real battle, it's definitely not enough. Only wandering around the periphery, I'm afraid he can't even find a single burning heaven fire crystal. As expected, my eldest senior brother Yi Yuan is still a little stronger, Yao Yaoi said disdainfully. And at the side, some people believe this and nodded. Is that so? TSK. I didn't expect that the first person in the first round would actually be so cowardly. Looks like this final round is not fated with him. And on the field, Tianyang had a calm face, too lazy to pay attention to the various gazes shot from the surroundings. He was here to snatch the myriad pill's sacred cannon, not to deal with this group of people. What did it have to do with him, what they thought? Then, another person walked out of the spatial door. Then, one after another, hundreds of cultivators walked out of the spatial door. However, most of them were injured and in a sorry state. After all, that was the burning heaven fire vein, and danger was everywhere. A small number of them were travel-worn. Perhaps they weren't injured, but it was definitely not good either. However, only Tianyang. His expression was calm, his clothes were neat, and there wasn't the slightest wound on his body, as if he was a flawless jade. There's no injury on his body at all. This guy, I reckon I'm squatting in some corner. Seeing this, Yao Yaoi was even more disdainful. Speaking of which, why don't I see eldest senior brother? Sweeping a glance over the hundreds of people who returned and not finding Yi Yuan's figure, Yao Yaoi couldn't help but be stunned. Yi Yuan's strength was listed as one of the 3 great rookies. Now, even Yang Tian, who was much weaker than Yi Yuan, had come out. Why hadn't Yi Yuan come out yet? I understand. Eldest senior brother must have felt that the burning heaven fire crystals in the periphery are too few, so he directly charged into the inner circle to plunder them. Everyone came out at the same speed. Eldest senior brother was in the depths of the burning heaven fire vein, so he naturally came out late. Yao Yaoi smiled. As expected of the successor of my medicine god sex divine alchemy cauldron, you're clearly winning, yet you're still thinking about breaking through your limits. At the side, the young man who had already been fooled nodded, and his face was filled with longing. That's amazing. Several minutes passed. Just now, a person had walked out of the spatial gate. However, that person was not Yi Yuan. Jean Daoping? Yao Yaoi was stunned. Wasn't that the alchemist from Dansai who was infuriated by his words and relied on Tianyang to win a spot in the medicine fair? Why wasn't it Yi Yuan? At that moment, the Dragon Mountain Elder indifferently glanced at the hundreds of people. Then, he closed the spatial gate. What's going on? Yao Yaoi panicked. What are you doing? My eldest senior brother Yi Yuan hasn't come out yet. Why are you closing the space gate? Yao Yaoi shouted angrily, completely ignoring the fact that the person opposite him was a Banten Simian half-saint. Yi Yuan died inside. Yao Yaoi had no such thoughts at all. What a joke. Eldest senior brother Yi Yuan's strength was the number one among this generation of young alchemists. Apart from those shameless old alchemists who were half a step in a minor saint level, he was definitely the number one material. How could he die in the burning heaven fire vein? As for detonating the myriad pill sacred token to escape, that was even more impossible. Even if eldest senior brother Yi Yuan died, it was impossible for him to detonate the myriad pill sacred token and become a deserter. Therefore, Yao Yaoi was incomparably determined. Even if the other party was a Banten Simian half-saint, he was still incomparably angry. This matter was definitely the Dragon Mountain Elder's fault. When the Dragon Mountain Elder heard this, his expression did not change at all. He said indifferently, all the myriad pill sacred tokens have already arrived here. Every single myriad Dan sacred token is connected to me. All 389 of them are already here. As for the rest, whether they detonate the myriad pill sacred token to escape, die without detonating the myriad pill sacred token, or die after detonating the myriad pill sacred token, this old man does not know. The Dragon Mountain Elder said indifferently. The myriad pill sacred token was bound by blood. Once the owner died, the myriad pill sacred token would also be destroyed. Hearing this, Yao Yaoi was speechless, but he was still incomparably determined that the Dragon Mountain Elder was definitely wrong. But how could eldest senior brother Yi Yuan die in the burning heaven fire vein? The myriad pill sacred token has already been destroyed. I don't know if he's dead or not, but if you continue to be impudent in front of this old man, don't blame this old man for kicking you out of Dansai. The Dragon Mountain Elder's turbid eyes flashed as he said indifferently. Hearing this, Yao Yaohui's entire body trembled, revealing a look of fear. Only then did he remember. The one presiding over the myriad pill ceremony was not the Peak Wu Zun who had accepted Yi Yuan as an apprentice disciple. Instead, it was a minor saint-level alchemist, a half-saint-level alchemist. Yao Yaoi instantly admitted defeat and retreated. However, his expression was still filled with hatred. How could eldest senior brother Yi Yuan detonate the myriad pill sacred token? And no one paid attention to whether Yi Yuan was Yi Yuan or not. In their hearts, the number that the Dragon Mountain Elder had casually said hung high up in the air. 389 people. Go. 721 people. This time, 389 people. Although those who were unable to return here might have only detonated the myriad pill sacred token and not died. However, it could also mean that more than 300 people had encountered a life and death crisis. This burning heaven fire vein was truly terrifying. Now, the order. The top 300 people will enter the final round. The Dragon Mountain Elder said indifferently. In the next moment, 389 myriad pill sacred tokens automatically flew out and landed in the hands of the Dragon Mountain Elder. As for Tianyang, he looked at the myriad pill sacred token that flew out with a slightly unhappy expression. The burning heaven fire crystal that he had painstakingly gathered had to be given to Banten Simian. This feeling was truly unpleasant. First place, Wadumang, 886 pills. Second place, Jiangdumang, 885 pills. The Dragon Mountain Elder said indifferently. Hearing this, the expressions of the two people could not help but change slightly. One person revealed a trace of pride, while the other person's expression was somewhat ugly. Below the stage, someone had already cried out in surprise. Aren't those the two famous minor saint alchemists in the southern part of the Eastern Divine region? Why have they also come to the myriad pill ceremony? Third place, Yinan Feng, 809 pills. Su Province's strongest alchemist, Yinan Feng. Another person cried out in surprise. On the stage, a handsome young man with blue hair that reached his waist and a devilish smile on his face immediately widened the corners of his mouth. The Dragon Mountain Elder was expressionless as he continued to report. 19th place, Chenlun, 670 pills. 28th place, Tangyu, 640 pills. 99th place, Jianglin, 580 pills. 210th place, Wu Qingshun, 256 pills. The Dragon Mountain Elder said indifferently. And below, hearing this, Yao Yaoi revealed a trace of ridicule. As expected, Yang Tian will definitely not be able to enter the final round. 299th place, Yang Tian, 211 pills. 300th place, Jin Daoping, 210 pills. The Dragon Mountain Elder spoke again. At this moment, a powerful gust of wind was born on the stage. The remaining 89 people were sent out of the arena. 300 had been decided. The final round began. The Dragon Mountain Elder waved his hand, and 300 bluestone platforms rose into the air. One by one, the spirit gathering arrays were activated. And below, Chapter 1069. Of all people, it had to be the second from the bottom. Yao Yaohui's expression was so ugly that it was as if he had eaten a fly. He stared at Tian Yang, who was still smiling faintly on the stage. From the looks of it now, no matter how he looked at it, it was as if he was mocking him. You're getting ahead. If senior brother Yi Yuan wasn't here, you wouldn't have had the chance to be so arrogant. Yao Yaoi growled. The young man beside him could not help but interject. Even if he was here, he would still be the 300th. You can enter. Hearing that, Yao Yaohui's face turned even greener. This is the final round of the myriad pill ceremony? Tianyang looked at the bluestone stage in the sky that was emitting a faint green light. A trace of surprise appeared on his face. With the power of his primordial spirit, he instantly sensed the extraordinariness of this bluestone stage. An energy fluctuation that calmed one's mind twined around the bluestone stage. Furthermore, the bluestone stage itself was incomparably sturdy. This bluestone stage is probably close to a supreme-grade spirit weapon. Furthermore, it's a supreme-grade spirit weapon with incomparably special effects and extremely high value. Tianyang praised. Disregarding everything else, just the calming fluctuation alone was enough to double the value of this bluestone stage. After all, the most important thing in refining pills was focus. Only by focusing on the pills could one control every bit of the flame's strength and every change in the herbs. A bluestone stage with countless valuable calming pills on top of it. One could see how many pill refiners would go crazy over this bluestone stage if it appeared in the outside world. 300 people onto the bluestone stage. At this moment, the Dragon Mountain Elder shouted loudly. Hearing that, everyone immediately rose into the air. Many people set their sights on the bluestone stage in the center, which was the most eye-catching. On the other hand, Chun Luan and the rest were incomparably quiet. They quietly walked to an empty stage and took out their pill cauldrons and herbs. Tianyang randomly chose one and calmed his heart. These 300 bluestone stages were exactly the same. There was no difference at all. The one in the center that was slightly more special, which was the most eye-catching position. It was a pity that this was the myriad pill ceremony and not the selection competition. Instead of wasting energy to fight for the bluestone stages that had no special meaning, it was better to focus on refining pills. Shimming fire cauldron, come out. A mysterious fluctuation emerged from Tianyang's interspatial bag. Next, the heavy and huge pitch-black cauldron appeared on the bluestone platform. It was different from when Tianyang first got it. The current mysterious underworld flame cauldron had already lost that layer of dim light, and what replaced it was an incomparably bright outer shell. Profound patterns were inscribed on the surface of the cauldron, and a heavy and restrained aura emanated from it. Just one look at it was enough to calm one's mind. It was vast and magnificent, but there was not the slightest bit of ostentatiousness. This cauldron, in an instant, countless alchemists turned to look at the profound flame cauldron. They were all 7th-grade alchemists and above, so they could naturally see that the Netherism flame cauldron was extraordinary. F*CK. This guy was really lucky. How could this pill cauldron belong to him? When Yao Yaoi saw this, he was furious. His eyes were filled with jealousy. Why did this pill cauldron not belong to him, but to this second-to-last bumpkin? Until now, he still could not tell that the current mysterious underworld flame cauldron and the one at the medicine gathering were the same pill cauldron. He thought that this mysterious underworld flame cauldron was obtained from the burning heaven fire vein. And at this moment, a bright light flashed in the Dragon Mountain Elder's unfocused eyes. This pill cauldron seems to have a trace of the burning heaven fire crystal's aura. Good boy. After obtaining the burning heaven fire crystal, you didn't treasure it properly and directly fed it to your own pill cauldron? You're so confident of entering the top 300? The corners of the Dragon Mountain Elder's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. The last person who gave him such a feeling was a few hundred years ago. I didn't expect that someone born poor would have such a fortuitous encounter. Chen Luan took a deep look at Tianyang, looking at that ridiculously young face that carried an indifferent expression that could see through heaven and earth. A strange feeling arose in his heart. Clearly, the aura of life was telling him that Tianyang was not more than 100 years old. However, why did he feel that Tianyang was some old monster who had regained his youth? I don't care anymore. This time, I must rush into the top 10 of the Myriad Pills ceremony and watch the Myriad Pills sacred ceremony. Chen Luan took a deep breath, and in the next moment, the flame in his hand burned. The earthy yellow flame appeared under his pill cauldron and quickly finished heating it. Rank 5 spiritual fire, great earth black tortoise fire. Compared to the other spiritual fires that were at least rank 6, Chenlun's was undoubtedly much more unsightly. At this moment, everyone broke away from their shock and summoned their own flames. The flame that little Princess Tang, who is also Tang Yu, summoned was a half-step rank 7 spiritual fire, Demon Phoenix Flame. As for the third place, the strongest pill refiner in Su Province, the lesser Saint Yi Nanfeng, summoned a flame that was also half-step rank 7. As for the first and second place, although they were slightly weaker, they also had the terrifying strength of a peak rank 6. Then, their eyes flickered as if they were thinking about what kind of pill to refine. At this moment, Tianyang smiled faintly. The true flame of destruction in his hand burned fiercely. Boom! In an instant, the surrounding flames began to riot. Chen Luan's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly suppressed the earthly black tortoise flame that was jumping violently under his pill cauldron. This rank 5 spiritual fire had been refined for decades, so how could it still riot? As for little Princess Tang, who was close to Tianyang, she released the power of her primordial spirit to forcibly control her demon phoenix flame. Yi Nanfeng, Hui Dumeng, Jiangdu, and the other lesser saint pill refiners were doing well, but their own spiritual fires were still deviating in a certain direction. The 300 bluestone platforms and the 299 spiritual fires were all deviating in the same direction. That place was shockingly the heavenly sun. Once the fire appeared, all flames would bow to it. Rank 7 spiritual fire, Yi Nanfeng's expression changed drastically. His handsome face revealed an expression as if he had seen a ghost. How could a rank 7 spiritual fire appear in the hands of a young man? According to their information, wasn't Yi Yuan, the successor of the divine alchemy cauldron, the only one who possessed a rank 7 spiritual fire? Moreover, The rank 7 spiritual fire was the white-blue heavenly ice flame, not the pure black one. This kid actually has a rank 7 spiritual fire. Seeing this, Yao Yao Wei became even more furious. In his opinion, the rank 7 spiritual fire was Yi Yuan's exclusive right. Now, Tianyang had shamelessly stolen Yi Yuan's rank 7 spiritual fire. In the corner, Tianyang's expression was normal, and the netherworld fire cauldron continued to transmit messages. At this moment, Tianyang smiled faintly. Since I can only repair a lesser saint pill like you, then I'll choose you. Tianyang chuckled, and in the next moment, countless medicinal herbs flew out of the space bag. Chapter 1070. Minor Saint Grade, the Saintly Star Elixir. Tianyang's lips curled. In an instant, all the rare herbs he had obtained from Saint Songqing's cave flew out of his space bag. Around the heavenly sun, a suffocating forest of medicinal herbs was formed. The myriad pill tome recorded 3 types of minor saint grade elixir recipes. Among them, 2 of them were incomplete, and the last one had only been completely repaired by a special opportunity recently. The only one was the Saintly Star Elixir. The Saintly Star Elixir gathered the power of the stars and condensed it into a pill. If it was successfully refined, the aura it emitted was enough to raise the primordial spirit of an ordinary cultivator. If it was consumed, the extremely pure power of the stars would be enough to raise the primordial spirit by a level. This was the Saintly Star Elixir, a minor saint grade primordial spirit elixir. However, even in Saint Songqing's cave, there was only one set of herbs. If the refinement fails, then we're done for. Tianyang chuckled, although he said that he did not stop refining the elixir. For the current him, an ordinary peak grade 7 elixir was no longer of much use. The only useful thing was probably a minor saint grade elixir, like the Saintly Star Elixir. Tianyang would never refine elixirs for the sake of refining elixirs. If he wanted to refine an elixir, he would refine one that was useful. Fire come! Tianyang shouted. In an instant, the true flames of destruction burned. The shimmering fire cauldron was heated. In the next moment, Tianyang threw a herb into the cauldron with great precision. 9 fire dragons were born from the cauldron. They opened their huge dragon mouths and swallowed the herb. 9 dragons wheel reversal technique, go! On the side, the 299 alchemists began to refine elixirs. Countless flames burned with the most dazzling light. Countless precious herbs burned in the cauldron. The myriad pill tome had officially begun. This Tianyang's alchemy skills are really flashy. Yao Yao, we couldn't help but grit his teeth as he looked at the 9 pitch-black fire dragons leaping and flying within Tianyang's Netherism fire cauldron. He secretly cursed Tianyang for failing to refine the pill. On the other side, Yi Nanfeng and the other smiled. The flames in his hands danced around like spirits, refining each and every single one of the medicinal herbs to their very limits. Although they hadn't entered the half-saint realm yet, they were still very strong. However, they were also genuine minor saint grade alchemists. However, the alchemists around Tianyang had a much harder time. Apart from a few who possessed a level 6 peak spirit fire and were able to remain unaffected, the rest could only suppress their spirit fire while refining the medicinal herbs. Jade Spirit Fruit. Tianyang quickly refined the first medicinal herb. With a wave of his right hand, the second medicinal herb appeared in his hand. Green Spirit Jade Fruit. Even if it was not refined into a pill and consumed directly, it could strengthen the power of the primordial spirit. It was worth tens of millions of Reiki. However, at this moment, it could only become a part of the Saintly Star pill. Refine. With a wave of Tianyang's hand, the 9 fire dragons let out a ferocious roar and swallowed the green jade spirit jade fruit. The true flames of destruction burned fiercely, constantly destroying the skin of the jade spirit jade fruit and extracting the essence inside. At the same time, they burned away the impurities, making the pill perfect. This kid, in the distance, Wu Zun at the peak glared at Tianyang in the corner with a venomous expression. Just half a month ago, it was this person who had killed his apprentice disciple, Yi Yuan, who could refine a divine pill, right in front of him in the sky-burning fire vein. Although most people now thought that Yi Yuan hadn't come to the myriad pill ceremony in time because of an accident. However, only Wu Zun at the peak and Tianyang knew. Yi Yuan was dead. No, even if this is the myriad pill ceremony, the person who killed my apprentice disciple won't have an easy time. Wu Zun at the peak roared. In the next moment, he seemed to have thought of a brilliant plan, and the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. I'll let you be proud for a while more. When you're about to finish refining the pill, I'll let you experience what true despair is. Wu Zun at the peak laughed viciously and retreated to the side. In the distance, the Dragon Mountain Elder glanced at Wu Zun at the peak, but didn't find anything strange, so he retracted his gaze. The true flames of destruction burned fiercely. Tianyang's gaze was focused on the Xianming fire cauldron. The power of his primordial spirit was constantly being consumed. Even if he cultivated the secret skill of 7 stars, refining a pill like the saintly star pill would save some effort. However, refining a minor saint grade pill was still too difficult. Even Tianyang's forehead was covered in fine sweat at this moment. The further he went, the harder it was to control the herbs. In the beginning, he could still take a stroll in the park. However, towards the end, he needed to focus every minute and every second without slacking off. At the side, even Yinan Feng and the other minor saint grade alchemists were extremely anxious at this moment. Ha ha ha, I've refined it. At this moment, an ecstatic roar was heard, and the spiritual fire burned fiercely. A crisp sound suddenly came from one of the cauldrons. In the next moment, a perfectly round pill rushed out of the cauldron's restraints and flew fiercely toward the sky. As if it had a mind of its own, it tried to escape from the alchemist's control. Keep it, the alchemist shouted angrily, and a suction force was released from the center of his palm. Immediately, the pill that flew out was sucked into his palm without any resistance. At this moment, thunderclouds gathered in the sky, and the dull sound of thunder was heard continuously. In the next moment, a ferocious roar was suddenly heard, and a lightning bolt that resembled a silver snake struck down fiercely toward the alchemist. The momentum was incomparably vast. Around the alchemist, some of the alchemist's hands trembled because of the successful refining of the pill, and they accidentally burned a cauldron of herbs. The opportunity was lost just like that. Countless alchemists were furious, but there was nothing they could do. They took out their backups of herbs and started refining again. The myriad pill ceremony did not only test one's ability to refine pills. As for the alchemist who refined the pill first, it was not certain that he would win. According to common sense, the more powerful the pill, the more troublesome it would be to refine it, and the more time it would take to refine it. However, if one could get a good ranking in the myriad pill ceremony, even if one could not see the myriad pill sacred ceremony and enter the Bantan Simian, there would still be many forces who would throw an olive branch to him. Tang Yu and the others looked solemn as they were still immersed in their refining. Their goal was not just to join a good force. They wanted to enter the Bantan Simian and enter the myriad pill sacred ceremony. However, their hands were trembling slightly, and it was inevitable that they would be affected. As for Tianyang, his expression was as usual as he controlled the flames and refined the herbs one by one. Little Tian Xingzi has successfully refined. A trace of exhaustion flashed across Tianyang's eyes, and then it was replaced with incomparable solemnity. Inside the Xianming fire cauldron, a strangely shaped herb that looked like a star in the sky slowly melted. Specks of starlight filled the entire Xianming fire cauldron. Next was the most crucial step. Tianyang took a deep breath, and in the next moment, a strange light flickered in his eyes. 7 stars secret technique release. In the name of Tian Xingzi, draw upon the power of the galaxy. Tianyang roared, and in the next moment, a resplendent pillar of light suddenly shot out from the Xianming fire cauldron, shooting straight into the sky. At this moment, Wu Zun, who was hiding in the dark, also made his move. A lightning-like ray of light. Chapter 1071. In the name of the heavenly star, I summon the power of the Milky Way. A resplendent pillar of light shot straight up into the sky. The originally clear sky was affected by the beam of light. It turned into a boundless Milky Way. Seeing this, the Dragon Mountain Elder was shocked. Alchemy, a phenomenon of heaven and earth? This has already surpassed the level of divine pills and is close to the level of divine pill. Divine pills only cause the heaven and earth to be angry and send down a calamity in advance to destroy the pill. Divine pills, on the other hand, could change the heaven and earth. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. Summon the Milky Way. Tianyang shouted again, and the secret technique of 7 stars released waves of Xinguang. That's right, this was his biggest reliance in refining the Saintly Stars elixir. Although the difficulty of refining the herbs for the Saintly Stars elixir was also extremely difficult, it was only beyond the peak of grade 7 and was not as difficult as other minor divine grade pills. Although Tianyang had not reached minor divine grade, he could still barely complete it. However, the herbs for the Saintly Stars elixir were secondary. The most important thing was now using the power of the herbs to communicate with the Milky Way and summon the power of the stars. God knows how many minor saint alchemists wanted to refine the stellar saint pill, but in the end, they failed at this step. If this step was successful, then the furnace of elixir would be 90% successful. If it failed, no matter how perfect the herbs were, it would only be a furnace of high grade 7 elixir. It had the form, but not the spirit. Tianyang only had one set of herbs. In other words, if he did not succeed, he would die trying. Whoosh! Boom! At this moment, a terrifying sound that was like a thunderclap resounded. A black lightning, under the cover of the night sky, summoned by the Milky Way, shot towards the shimmering fire cauldron. It was fierce, domineering, and fast. There wasn't the slightest bit of sloppiness. It was all for the sake of destroying Tianyang's furnace of pills. Who dares? The Dragon Mountain Elder was a sage-to-be elite and a minor divine grade alchemist. In just a moment, he noticed the terrifying black lightning. The terrifying aura of a sage-to-be instantly exploded from the Dragon Mountain Elder. The half-saint was furious. However, the black lightning was unleashed by Wu Zun at his peak. In terms of power, it was naturally inferior to the Dragon Mountain Elder. However, in terms of speed, the Dragon Mountain Elder, who was a step behind, might not be able to stop it in time. Damn it! The Elder of the Dragon Mountain was completely enraged. The murkiness in his eyes was completely replaced by fury. He unleashed his saintly aura and attacked at lightning speed. Look at the speed and power of the black lightning. Perhaps it was not only to destroy Tianyang's alchemy this time. More importantly, he wanted to kill Tianyang. Below, there was an uproar. In the final round of the Myriad Pill ceremony, someone had actually interfered with the participants' refinement. If news of this got out, Bantan Simeon would lose all face. Ha ha! Yang Tian, you're a 7th grade alchemist, but what's the use of that now? Who told you to commit so many evil deeds? Now, even the heavens have come to punish you. Yao Yaohui laughed crazily in his heart. At this moment, the black lightning had already arrived in front of Tianyang. Tianyang's pupils instantly contracted to the extreme. The power of his primordial spirit was completely released. Everything around him seemed to have slowed down by countless times. His right hand was still controlling the shimmering fire cauldron, carrying out the Star River technique. As for his left hand, it instantly erupted with the terrifying power of the Dragon King's body. Great Void, Sword Embryo out. Massacre Domain, open. The power of his primordial spirit, explode. Martial Soul Talent, Devouring Heaven. At this moment, all the trump cards that Tianyang could release were all unleashed. The attack of Wu Zun at his peak, even in order to conceal it, did not even display 50% of his strength. It was not something that only Tianyang, who was at the 4th stage of the Wu Zun realm, could withstand. Devouring Heaven's secret technique, devour for me. Tianyang's eyes burned with madness. At this moment, the Devouring Heaven's secret technique directly erupted. An incomparably terrifying, devouring power spread out in all directions, with Tianyang as the center. In an instant, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, gathered by dozens of spirit-gathering formations, turned into a part of Tianyang's true origin. Although the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was not as great as the demonic chi's amplification of the devouring heaven secret technique, it could still bring about an incomparably powerful effect when it was concentrated to a certain extent. Wu Zun at the peak of the fourth stage of the realm. Wu Zun at the fifth stage of the realm. Wu Zun at the peak of the fifth stage of the realm. Wu Zun at the sixth stage of the realm. Tianyang's aura soared by 2 stages at this moment. At the same time, the great void sword embryo violently slashed out. Sword breaking 9 desolates. As the sword slashed out, the 9 desolates were broken and all directions were leveled. An incomparably bright and powerful sword light violently collided with the black lightning. Boom! A terrifying loud sound reverberated throughout the entire myriad pill ceremony and Dansinaville. Before the black lightning could break the Star River technique, it was blocked outside by the sword-breaking 9 desolates. Did he succeed? Everyone's hearts could not help but rise to their throats. Could it be that Tianyang could still block this attack and continue refining pills? In the dark, the peak Wu Zun saw this and could not help but curl his lips into a mocking smile. You want to block my carefully prepared attack with this level of skill? As soon as he finished speaking, around the black lightning, tiny bolts of lightning suddenly spread out. They were still resolute as they shot towards the dark fire cauldron. However, Tianyang no longer had any means to deal with these tiny thunderbolts. Bastard! On the side, Chenluan's eyes were red. He did not even care about refining pills as he stared fixedly at this scene. As an alchemist, what he hated the most was people who took advantage of others to launch sneak attacks while they were refining pills. In addition to his anger, Chenluan also felt a deep sense of despair. Now, Tianyang no longer had any means to deal with the remaining attack. Could it be that the opportunity that he had fought so hard for was going to fail, just like this? You want to get Grandpa's pills? At this moment, Tianyang raised the corner of his mouth and revealed a trace of wild laughter in his eyes. Live for another 80,000 years. Sky-devouring seal, open. Superimposed with the sky-devouring secret technique, Tianyang's devouring power had reached an extremely terrifying level at this moment. The sword broke through the black thunderbolts that Jiu Huang was blocking, as well as the branches of thunderbolts that were attacking the dark fire cauldron. They were all affected by this powerful devouring power at this moment. They forcibly changed their direction and rushed into the sky-devouring seal, rushing into Tianyang's body. Puff! Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood, which fell into the dark fire cauldron. The sky-devouring seal and the sky-devouring secret technique had previously devoured things that had no resistance. For example, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, or the power of mountains, rivers, and seas. However, this time, the peak Wu Zun sneak attack. Not only did it have a strong resistance, but it was also much stronger than Tianyang. Tianyang's aura instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. The true flames of destruction fluctuated violently and almost could not keep burning. However, Tianyang still gritted his teeth and released the power of his primordial spirit. Heavenly stars descend. In the pillar of light, bright stars could be seen. Specks of dazzling starlight converged and then turned into huge stars that descended. They landed in the dark fire cauldron. At this moment, a terrifying pressure erupted from within the dark fire cauldron. In the center of Dansinaville, the tens of millions of people surrounding the 300 people could not help but prostrate. Even the Dragon Mountain Elder revealed a trace of shock on his face. In the dark, the peak Wu Zun's face was filled with disbelief as he forced himself to bend down. The chaotic power of all things wrapped around the dark fire cauldron. However, that pressure still broke through the power of all things and descended into the world. Chapter 1072. The majestic power suppressed the heavens and the earth. The power of the stars seemed to be endless as it gathered into the Xianming fire cauldron. Tianyang bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. It contained the energy of the black lightning that had been forcefully absorbed by the heaven-devouring secret technique and the heaven-devouring seal. After Tianyang's forceful devouring, the danger of this energy had been reduced by more than half. Now, with such a huge amount of star power, this power, not only would it not bring any harm to the saintly star's pill, it could even accelerate the formation of the saintly star's pill. How is this possible? In an unknown corner, Wu Zun, who was at his peak, looked as if he had seen a ghost when he saw this. Ordinary Wu Zun would not have been able to see what had happened at all. However, he had seen it clearly. Tianyang, while the black lightning was raging in his body, still maintained the heaven-connecting technique and drew in the power of the stars. If he did not succeed, he would die instantly. After all, using that kind of alchemy technique had already consumed a lot of the power of the primordial spirit. In addition, there was a powerful force raging in his body. If he was not careful, the black lightning would break through his defense and end his life. It could be said that this was a huge gamble. If he succeeded, the power of the stars would descend, and he would have more than enough to slowly dissolve the black lightning. If he did not succeed, the lightning would burn him, and he would be doomed eternally. This kid is too ruthless. The Dragon Mountain Elder was also stunned at this moment. His cultivation was much stronger than Wu Zun, and he could see more than Wu Zun. However, the more he saw, the more he understood the danger. Even he could not compare to this kind of courage. This kid, on the side, Wu Qingchun, who was finishing his alchemy, revealed a look of shock. To think that he was called the Elixir King before. Now look, which young alchemist could compete with Tianyang? Perhaps even Yi Nanfeng and the other older generation were far inferior. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Hua Dumeng, who was focused on alchemy, could not help but divert a bit of his attention to look at the pale Tianyang. There was a rare look of admiration on his face. Such boldness. Even if Tianyang's alchemy cultivation was inferior to his, it was enough to make him admire him from the bottom of his heart. Luckily, I have the immortal bloodline, Tianyang, who was rapidly absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, twitched the corner of his mouth and swallowed the blood that was about to spurt out. Inside his body, the immortal divine flame was quickly ignited. It swallowed all the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the surroundings and turned it into nourishment to repair his body. If it were not for his immortal bloodline, even if Tianyang succeeded, he would have been severely injured. Even if he succeeded in attracting the power of the galaxy, he might not have been able to successfully create the star holy pill. But now, there was no such concern. Billowing Milky Way, swirl into my core. Tianyang waved his hand, and the true flames of destruction burned fiercely. The 7 stars released a brilliant light around Tianyang. In the next moment, all the power of the stars was absorbed into the pill cauldron. Condensed, under the effect of the power of the stars, those herbs automatically turned into the purest medicinal essence. Then it was time to condense the core. Roar! The 9 black dragons and the 9 dragons' wheel roared ferociously and surrounded the Xianming fire cauldron, releasing rays of light. The Xianming fire cauldron itself also released a dazzling light. The slightly blurry, mysterious patterns on its surface became extremely clear at this moment. It actually evolved into an archaic image. Inside the pill cauldron, the galaxy spun and gradually turned into a round ball. A fragrance that made one's pores relax and refreshed one's consciousness spread out. After completing the attraction of the power of the stars, the star holy pill was 90% successful. With the help of the galaxy, condensing the core was no longer a difficult task. Under Tianyang's meticulous control and the burning of the true flames of destruction, the herbs in the Xianming fire cauldron connected with the power of the galaxy and gradually condensed. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. Refining the herbs took Tianyang almost a month, and condensing the core into a core was even more exhausting. In these 10 days, Chun Luan, Little Princess Tang, Jiang Lin, and Jean Daoping had all condensed their pills. However, Wu Qingshun was very regretful. A mistake had caused all the herbs to be wasted, and he could only leave dejectedly. In the night sky that Tianyang summoned with the heaven-connecting technique, thunderclouds gathered continuously, and lightning descended, bombarding the alchemists one by one. However, those who could enter the myriad pill ceremony were all people who were fully prepared, and it was easy for them to deal with the pill tribulation. Other than an unlucky alchemist whose spiritual weapon failed, everyone had passed the pill tribulation. And now, there were only 4 people who were still refining pills. Minor Saint alchemists, Hu Dumeng and Jiang Dumeng, the strongest alchemist in Su province, known as the Pill Emperor of Water, Yinan Feng. There was also the Heavenly Sun. This Yang Tian used such a powerful secret technique, but he still needs such a long time to refine. A sliver of surprise appeared on the face of the Dragon Mountain Elder. He had never seen the secret technique that Tianyang had used to draw on the power of the stars. He had thought that it would greatly increase the speed of Tianyang's refinement, but he did not expect that it would still take so long. Could it be that he's refining a minor saint pill? How is that possible? Below, Yao Yaoi was unhappy. He's indeed powerful, but he's not as good as my eldest senior brother Yi Yuan. I guess he's refining some kind of powerful peak 7th grade pill. It's impossible for him to reach the minor saint grade. If minor saint grade pills were so easy to refine, where would those pill emperors put their faces? Yao Yaoi said. Although he was still unhappy with Tianyang, he could not mock him anymore. Otherwise, the excited alchemists around him would be enough to cut him into pieces. That's true. Someone nodded. However, this Yang Tian is so young, but he's already so powerful. If nothing goes wrong, there will be another pill emperor in our eastern sky divine region in another 300 to 500 years. Hearing that, the crowd fell silent. Tianyang looked too young, but he was so powerful that it made them feel ashamed of their inferiority. For such a monstrous talent, could becoming a pill emperor be his final goal? Everyone, thank you for letting me win. Suddenly, Yinan Feng clapped his hands. The strange flame that was like water ripples suddenly retracted. In the next moment, a huge wave of energy burst out from the cauldron, summoning countless lightning tribulations. It's a peak 7th grade pill, the 3-origin spiritual breakthrough pill. That's a pill that can help Wu Zun to increase his cultivation level. The Pill Emperor of Water is playing it safe this time. With his strength, it's possible for him to successfully refine a minor saint grade pill. The crowd could not help but discuss. At the same time, Hu Duming and Jiang Du slapped the lid of the cauldron. 2 pills flew up into the sky at the same time. Half-step minor saint grade pill, the 8-step soul elevating pill. Half-step minor saint grade pill, the 9 revolving origin refining pill. At the same time, countless lightning tribulations were summoned. The 2 of you are indeed powerful. Seeing that, Yinan Feng could not help but smile. The 2 of them were really powerful to be able to refine a half-step minor saint grade pill in such an important competition. Thunderclouds were moving in the sky, as if they were ready to release their divine aura at any time. At this moment, everyone's attention was on Tianyang. Now, he was the only one who was still refining. 9 heavenly galaxies enter my cauldron. At this moment, Tianyang's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. A mysterious and powerful gaze burst out from his eyes. Xianming fire cauldron, open. A terrifying aura was released from his body. Even a half-step minor saint grade 8 steps soul elevating pill and 9 revolving origin refining pill, as well as Yinan Feng's 3-origin spiritual breakthrough pill, could not help but lower their heads. Yinan Feng and the rest instantly narrowed their eyes. This is Chapter 1073. Little Saint Grade? Everyone was stunned when they sensed the crystal-like pill flying out of the Xianming fire cauldron. The 3 minor Saint Grade elixir emperors were in disbelief at this moment. Above the dark nether flame cauldron, a light blue, crystalline, and translucent medicinal pill the size of 2 fingers slowly floated in the air. It did not run away, nor did it shoot up into the sky like the pill that Yinan Feng had refined. Instead, it floated quietly where it was. It was as if it was the only pill in the world. At this moment, the Dragon Mountain Elder was also in shock. He was a half-saint in alchemy and had been proficient in it for many years. He had come into contact with countless pills, including many little saint-grade pills. Naturally, he could recognize it at a glance. This Stellar Sage elixir was so crystal clear that it did not look like a pill. It was a genuine little saint-grade pill. Normally, little saint-grade pills need the support of a saint-grade pill. However, no matter what, it is impossible for this lad to have a saint-grade pill. The Dragon Mountain Elder looked at Tianyang with a hint of surprise in his eyes. It was extremely difficult to obtain a saint-grade pill. Back then, the Dragon Mountain Elder had already been praised as a minor saint alchemist. However, it had taken him hundreds of years to reach the saint realm alchemy realm. Tianyang's life force was not even 100. How could he have a saint-grade pill? How could he have refined a little saint-grade pill? However, although the Dragon Mountain Elder was puzzled, he did not doubt the authenticity of the Stellar Sage elixir. The power of the stars on it was the power of the galaxy that had been drawn in by the heaven-connecting technique. There was also the aura of the black lightning of unknown origin on it. Although it was very faint, the Dragon Mountain Elder caught it. Perhaps the little saint-grade pill could have been prepared in advance. However, the unique power of the stars that could only appear today and the sudden attack of the black lightning could not have been prepared in advance. However, refining the pill is only the first step. The Dragon Mountain Elder glanced at the thunderclouds in the sky that were growing stronger with the birth of the saintly star pill. A sliver of sternness appeared on his face. Refining the pill was only the first step. The second step was to pass the pill tribulation. Only a pill that successfully passed the pill tribulation would be a real high-grade pill. It would not be a pile of ashes after the pill tribulation. This lad, how could he have refined a little saint-grade pill? At the peak, Wu Zun was also shocked. His gaze was fixed on the crystal-clear stars of extermination elixir. The greed in his eyes was not concealed at all as he stared at the stars of extermination elixir. A little saint-grade pill. This was a pill that even he could not refine. Although peak Wu Zun's peak elixir pill, his cultivation level of cultivation level saint-grade elixir. His level of the saint-grade elixir was only half saint-grade. At that moment, the peak Marshal Venerable's eyes were not just filled with greed for the star-exterminating elixir. Also jealousy. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, had a much higher cultivation level than Tianyang. In the end, in terms of alchemy, he was actually surpassed by this weakling who had killed his disciple. He was also an elder of Bantan Semyon. This time, there's no need for me to do anything. The pill tribulation will turn him into ashes on its own. Wu Zun, who was at the peak, sneered. He did not make a move to snatch the star-exterminating elixir. He knew that the Dragon Mountain Elder was already on the highest alert, let alone attacking. Even if he approached at an abnormal speed, it was possible for him to receive a thunderous strike from the Dragon Mountain Elder. The fact that he had almost destroyed the entire myriad pill ceremony was enough to embarrass the Dragon Mountain Elder. If he made another move, even if he was a half-saint of the pill Dao, he would definitely be laughed at behind his back. I don't know. I won't be able to survive this tribulation. Yinan Feng looked at the sky. The tribulation clouds had already covered a radius of 10,000 miles. They were so dense that not a trace of sunlight could be seen. His expression was grave. Normally, when alchemists refined pills, they would either prepare a powerful spiritual weapon beforehand or invite many strong cultivators to protect them. What they were wary of was the pill tribulation. At this moment, Tianyang did not have any treasures that were specially used to deal with the heavenly tribulation. It was even more impossible for someone to protect him. He could only use Wu Zun's cultivation level to resist the lesser saint-grade lightning tribulation. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, a series of muffled sounds suddenly erupted in the sky. At this moment, the four distinct thunderclouds suddenly trembled. Yi Nanfeng's was the fastest. He was the first to be forcefully swallowed by the tribulation clouds above Tianyang's head. Jiangdu and Hua Duming's tribulation clouds were not much slower. In just a few breaths, they were swallowed by the tribulation clouds of the star exterminating elixir. Instantly, the tribulation clouds of the star exterminating elixir became countless times stronger. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. The tribulation clouds actually merged. F***CK. Wu Qingchun, who had already entered the arena, could not help but curse at this moment. It was already very difficult for Master Yang to pass the pill tribulation. Now he's actually strengthening it. Is this world so intolerant of geniuses? On the other side, Jiang Lin's emotions were also complicated at this moment. On one hand, he was slightly depressed because Tianyang had surpassed him. On the other hand, he hoped that Tianyang could pass the pill tribulation. If he passed it, then Tianyang would definitely be the champion of the myriad pill ceremony. His name in the Eastern Xin state and Dansinouville would definitely spread far and wide. At this moment, the corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. In a place where others could not see, a ball of immortal fire burned fiercely. This is really such a coincidence, Tianyang chuckled. In the next moment, a dazzling sword light suddenly bloomed in his hand. Great void sword embryo out. An incomparably terrifying storm of sword chi raged around Tianyang. In the next moment, the tribulation clouds seemed to have finally completed the merger and brazenly fell. Tianyang also fiercely stomped the ground, causing the earth to tremble for a moment. The rebound force carried Tianyang towards the thunderbolt at an incomparably terrifying speed. The thunderbolt was like a water column descending from the sky. It was no longer an invisible electric light, but a lightning liquid filled with electric arcs. This level of thunderbolt was no longer something that could be overcome by human strength. He already had 1 foot in the Saint Realm. Sky Extreme Sword Art Firmament. Tianyang roared and suddenly took 9 steps forward, surrounded by streams of death chi. 9 steps of death. He slashed out with his sword, stepping on the common people, ascending the firmament, dominating the world. Chapter 1074. 9 steps of death, sword to the firmament. In just an instant, an incomparably violent slash of sword light was spat out, and it was strengthened to the extreme. It collided with the lightning pillar at a terrifying speed that was hard to detect with the naked eye. Boom! The surrounding heaven and earth started to tremble violently. The space was extremely fragile and was instantly torn apart. Below, the defensive formation that was specially used to deal with the pill tribulation also started to tremble. This collision almost shook the entire defensive formation. After all, when the formation was set up, it was not considered that a lesser Saint-grade elixir would be refined. Those who could refine lesser Saint-grade elixirs were all pill emperors of their generation. They were not weaker than the Dragon Mountain Elder. There was no reason for them to participate in the myriad pill ceremony. They also did not expect that the heavenly tribulation attracted by a lesser Saint-grade elixir would devour the other thunderclouds and form a terrifying lightning tribulation that was several times stronger. At this moment, Tianyang held the great void sword embryo in his hand and forced a smile on his face. At the moment when the great void sword embryo collided with the lightning pillar, a terrifying and powerful electric current rushed into Tianyang's body. With the strong body of the Dragon King as the support, the lightning did not severely injure Tianyang. However, it also caused Tianyang's muscles to be torn apart by the lightning. Blood splattered everywhere. It is really F***king difficult to evolve this immortal bloodline. Tianyang cursed angrily. The immortal bloodline ignited the immortal divine fire again and started to burn. Under the burning of the immortal flame, the wound that was torn by the powerful thunderbolt healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, another lightning pillar fell from the sky. Tianyang curled the corners of his mouth. The great void sword embryo in his hand shone with rays of light, and he took a step forward. His figure instantly disappeared from where he was. Then he slashed out with his sword. 10,000 swords to the origin. A heaven-class, peerless martial technique. The Saint State's sword principle was integrated into it. The powerful sacred martial technique that belonged to Shuntian Wuzuan suddenly released a terrifying power. This sword technique might not be the most suitable for Tianyang. However, at this moment, he was still able to unleash an incomparably terrifying power. With a single sword strike, heaven and earth trembled. The Thunder Pillar once again released bolts of lightning. The violent and terrifying thunderbolts rushed into Tianyang's body through the great void sword embryo. It tore apart Tianyang's countless muscles. However, before blood could even flow from that wound, it was ignited by the undying divine flame and healed at an incomparably frightening speed. In truth, it wasn't that the undying bloodline was so difficult to break through. Tianyang had only awakened the immortal bloodline about 5 years ago. Those who had obtained the immortal bloodline before had all cultivated for decades, or even centuries before they comprehended the immortal will and had the opportunity to break through. Tianyang had comprehended the undying will from the very beginning. His strength had increased so rapidly that he had reached the bottleneck of breaking through in less than 5 years. However, it was not that simple to break through. Tianyang had only used the undying divine flame a few times now. He could only make up for it by getting injured again and again. Only then could he complete the accumulation and break through. That was why Tianyang was so ecstatic when he saw this super strengthened version of the pill tribulation. He was still worrying about where he could get injured. Now, a pillow was sent to him when he was sleepy. Boom, boom, boom. Countless terrifying thunderbolts that seemed to be able to shatter heaven and earth violently rushed towards Tianyang. Tianyang seemed to never know exhaustion as he swung his sword to meet the attack. At first, there were countless people who exclaimed in shock. They were shocked that Tianyang's martial arts strength was so powerful. However, after Tianyang swung his sword and broke through dozens of thunder pillars, they were all numb. At such a young age, he was able to create lesser saint pills and forcefully refined pills. Now, he could even meet the lightning tribulation that was even more powerful than a lesser saint pill tribulation. Even a disciple of a saint would not be able to do such a monstrous thing. As for the Dragon Mountain old man, he revealed a bitter smile on his face. It's not just a disciple of a saint who can't do it. Even a saint couldn't do it when he was young. In the dark, Wu Zun at the peak saw this scene. His eyes seemed to spit fire, and he almost ground his teeth to pieces. Damn it! Why is this country bumpkin from outside the Eastern Sky Divine Land so powerful in martial arts? This kind of person should be blasted to pieces by lightning. How can he exist in this world? Wu Zun at the peak roared in his heart. If Tianyang successfully passed the pill tribulation this time, then Tianyang would be first in the myriad pill ceremony. As for the small saint rank pill, it would also be protected by the 10,000 Dan sacred sect. Only Tianyang alone could decide where it would go. Wu Zun at the peak was powerful, but he knew his limits. He was not good at alchemy, and he specialized in martial arts. However, he could not defeat the Dragon Mountain Elder in terms of martial arts cultivation. If he tried to snatch it by force, he would only fail and be killed. There were very few Wu Zun at the peak of Banten Semyon. However, for someone like him who disrupted the myriad pill ceremony, he could already be convicted as a traitor and executed on the spot. Die! Wu Zun at the peak roared crazily. At this moment, it seemed to echo the anger in Wu Zun at the peak of his heart. In the sky, strange black lightning suddenly condensed. At this moment, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. Above the blood demon lightning, black demon lightning, the Dragon Mountain Elder's expression changed completely when he saw this. Black demon lightning? How could a lesser saint pill refined by Wu Zun at the 4th stage attract the black demon lightning? It's impossible to attract the pill tribulation no matter how many peak grade 7 pills he swallowed. The Dragon Mountain Elder roared in disbelief. Black Demon Lightning. Who knew how many lesser Saint Pill refiners had trembled and avoided it like a tiger? Who knew how many lesser Saint Pills had been destroyed by the Black Demon Lightning? Now, a young man at the fourth stage of the Wuzun realm had refined a lesser Saint Pill. He could even attract the Black Demon Lightning. Senior brother, if you attack, I'm afraid it's against the rules. At this moment, Wuzun at the peak of his body flashed and arrived beside the Dragon Mountain Elder. Hearing this, the Dragon Mountain Elder's expression changed slightly. He retracted his hand that was about to attack. If he were to make a move, Tianyang's first place in the Myriad Pill ceremony would be in vain. Seeing this, Wuzun at the peak of his body was extremely satisfied. He looked at Tianyang with a deep malevolence in his eyes. Kid, let's see how you're going to deal with this Black Demon Lightning now. In the next moment, a terrifying black lightning pierced through the void and fell heavily toward Tianyang. At this moment, a terrifying flame suddenly erupted from Tianyang's chest. Tianyang's eyes seemed to have separated into two colors, black and white. Then, the sword in his hand slashed out fiercely. The Tao of life and death and the Saint Realm sword Tao merged into one. One sword, life and death. Boom! The Black Demon Lightning fell heavily and hit Tianyang right in the middle. At this moment, the flame also burned brightly. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The aura on Tianyang's body suddenly changed. It rose rapidly. Wuzun at the fourth stage of the realm. Wuzun at the peak of the fourth stage of the realm. Chapter 1075. Wuzun Realm Level 5. Everyone was stunned when they felt the aura that had become countless times stronger in an instant. Everyone had a look of disbelief on their faces. Facing the Black Demon Lightning and being hit by it, not only was he not severely injured, he even broke through the realm. Moreover, the breakthrough was a small realm. Wuzun, who was at the peak of his cultivation, froze on the spot. The Black Demon Lightning did not kill this kid? How could it be? Countless Wuzun at the peak of his cultivation had died in it, and countless lesser Saint-grade elixirs with amazing defensive power had been shattered by it. Since when could it not kill a small cultivator who was not even at the peak of Wuzun realm? At this moment, the thundercloud suddenly trembled. It gradually retreated under the shocked gazes of the crowd. This Black Demon Lightning was the last pill tribulation. After all, although Tianyang had refined the lesser Saint-grade elixir, the Stellar Sage elixir, the power of his primordial spirit was still somewhat weak. The lesser Saint-grade elixirs that he refined were naturally inferior to those refined by true half-saints of alchemy. To be able to summon the Black Demon Lightning, a terrifying existence that even half-saints of alchemy might not see more than a few times, was already extremely rare. Of course, many people would rather not have such a rare opportunity in midair. Tianyang looked at himself and felt that his true essence realm had skyrocketed in that instant. He could not help but be stunned. Wuzun Realm Level 5? He broke through just like that? Tianyang's face was full of disbelief. One had to know that the higher the endless spirit sea, the harder it was to fill it. He had just resisted a wave of Black Demon Lightning, but his endless spirit sea was filled and he broke through. He looked at the endless spirit sea in his dantian. It seemed that he had not barely broken through, and there was still some left. Immortal bloodline. In an instant, Tianyang thought of the reason. At the moment when the Black Demon Lightning hit Tianyang, the immortal fire burning in Tianyang's body was instantly magnified by countless times. It directly enveloped the Black Demon Lightning within it. It instantly swallowed the Black Demon Lightning whole. His immortal bloodline was only one step away from upgrading. At this moment, after directly devouring such a huge amount of energy from the Black Demon Lightning, his undying bloodline directly leveled up. Even his boundless spirit sea swallowed the remaining energy of the Black Demon Lightning without any hindrance. He directly broke through the threshold of Wuzun Realm Level 5 and entered Wuzun Realm Level 5. However, just 2 months ago, Tianyang had broken through to the 4th level of Wuzun Realm. In just 2 months, he had broken through again and reached the 5th layer Wu Zun stage. If other Wu Zun knew about this, they would probably go crazy with jealousy. In Wu Zun's realm, the gap between each small realm was almost impossible to fill even with opportunities. Only time and talent could continuously accumulate. It was the same even for the peerless geniuses. For a cultivator, 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. However, in the blink of an eye, Tianyang had broken through 2 levels in a row. Although I haven't tried it yet, it shouldn't be a problem for me to fight against an ordinary 7th layer Wu Zun stage. Tianyang mumbled to himself. He had 3 Saint Daos, the Thousand Creations Saint Dao, the Saint Realm Sword Dao, and the Dao of Life and Death. After refining the Minor Saint Grade Pill, the Stellar Sage Pill, his alchemy Dao had also improved rapidly. If he was not mistaken, it would not be long before his alchemy Dao reached the threshold of the Saint Realm. With 4 Saint Daos, an ordinary 7th layer Wu Zun stage would not necessarily be a match for Tianyang. If I activate the heaven-devouring secret technique and other means, I might be able to fight against an 8th layer Wu Zun stage. It seems like the day of saving Xintian Wuzhuan is not far away. Tianyang mumbled to himself. As his strength grew stronger, the All-Heavens sword became more active. The All-Heaven sword was not an object without a god. It had a sword spirit. However, in the battle between Xintian Wuzhuan and the Great Lord of Heaven, it had been severely injured. Until now, it could not say a word. However, Tianyang could still find out the All-Heaven sword's intention through various means. Naturally, he also knew that the All-Heaven sword was eager to return to its master's side. After so many years, the Great Lord of Heaven is probably at the half-saint realm at the very least. It's still a little too early to go now. Tianyang smiled bitterly. When he had just accepted the mission, he had thought that it was just a matter of delivering the sword after ascending. He did not expect this matter to be so troublesome. However, without the All-Heaven sword, the Great Lord of Heaven's shadow that the Demon Emperor had summoned back then would have been impossible to defeat. The catastrophe of Heaven Continent would not have been averted. Tianyang was still very grateful to the All-Heaven sword from the bottom of his heart. However, let's worry about the myriad pill ceremony first. Tianyang snapped out of his daze and glanced at the dumbfounded crowd below. He couldn't help but chuckle softly. He stepped on the void as if he was stepping on a flight of stairs. He walked down step by step. Finally, he returned to the side of the Xianming fire cauldron. At this moment, the crystal-like stellar sage elixir had also absorbed the lightning essence of the black demon lightning and become even more flawless. If it was an unpolished jade that had not been polished before, then now it was a flawless jade that had been polished in various ways and was shining brightly. Waves of lesser divine, heavenly sovereign's aura emanated from the stellar sage elixir and spread out to the surroundings. The pills that the others had refined could not help but lower their heads. They were suppressed by the aura of the saintly star pill and could not raise their heads. The last round of the myriad pill ceremony is over. At this moment, the Dragon Mountain Elder spoke. His voice rumbled and instantly woke everyone up. Instantly, the tens of millions of people surrounding the myriad pill ceremony in Dansinaville raised their heads and looked toward the center. The 300 people in the center were instantly under the gaze of tens of millions of people. The myriad pills ceremony that had been going on for several months finally came to an end. As for everyone else, they returned to their original positions. There was a pill floating quietly above everyone's cauldron. Shinlun's peak grade 7 pill had turned into a small horse and galloped back and forth on the cauldron. Little Princess Tang's pill had turned into a small bird and flew on the spot. The triple yuan breakthrough elixir refined by Yi Nanfeng turned into a palace, exuding an ancient and heavy aura. Jiang Dun and Hua Ming's half-step minor saint grade pills had turned into a tall tower with a phoenix and a stone tablet with a dragon circling around it. They exuded an extremely strong aura. As for Jean Daoping and the others, they were the simplest round pills. At the most eye-catching corner, the pill on top of the Xianming fire cauldron did not transform into anything. However, the pressure of the Saint grade caused it to overpower all of the transformation elixirs. 10th place, Tang Yu. The Dragon Mountain Elder suddenly spoke. Little Princess Tang heaved a sigh of relief and looked happy. 9th place, Chunlun. Hearing this, Chunlun's body softened as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. 8th place, 4th place, Yunanfeng. The Dragon Mountain Elder spoke. Hearing this, Yunanfeng's handsome face could not help but reveal a bitter smile. At the beginning, when he saw that there were only 2 minor saint grade heavenly sovereigns, Hu Dumeng and Jiang Dun, he thought that the top 3 were already in the bag. Who would have thought that a dark horse like Tianyang would appear out of nowhere? 3rd place, Hu Dumeng. Hearing this, Hu Dumeng beat his chest and stomped his feet. He looked regretful. 2nd place, Jiang Dun. Jiang Dun sighed softly. He felt that it was a pity, but he was not dissatisfied. In the end, the Dragon Mountain Elder fell silent. The entire place quieted down. Tens of millions of people could hear a pin drop. Tens of millions of eyes gathered on Tianyang. Chapter 1076. Champion Yang Tian. The Dragon Mountain Elder's loud shout resounded through the clouds. It was like a heavy hammer that ruthlessly struck everyone's hearts. Yao Yao Wei and the others were in disbelief. The Myriad Pills ceremony was held by the Eastern Sky, Divine Continent's alchemy, sacred sect, Banten Semyun. The champion was either a disciple of Banten Semyun or a genius from another alchemy faction in the Eastern Sky, Divine Continent. However, this time, the illusory Demon Road and the heaven-burning fire vein were unprecedentedly difficult. Even the previous champion might not have been able to pass it easily. In the end, there were even 2 half-step minor saint grade and several peak grade 7 pills competing for supremacy. He would be the ultimate champion. However, it was given to a young alchemist from a small alchemy faction outside the Eastern Sky, Divine Continent. With the terrifying power of a minor saint grade pill, he looked down on everyone and defeated everyone. Thinking of this, not only were Yao Yao Wei and the other Eastern Sky Divine Continent locals stunned, even Jiang Lin felt like he was in a dream. Although Tianyang was not from Dansinaville, he had only used Dansinaville's Myriad Pill sacred token to participate in the Myriad Pill ceremony. However, he had still come in the name of Dansinaville. At this moment, Tianyang had won the Myriad Pill ceremony's championship. Then, Dansinaville's reputation would definitely spread far and wide. Master Yang is indeed amazing, Wu Qingchen praised. He could no longer have any thoughts of comparing himself with Tianyang. If the gap was just a hair's breadth, perhaps he could stimulate 120% of his fighting spirit and chase after him with all his might. If the gap was too big, he might only be able to use 100% of his strength. If the gap between them was as wide as the distance between heaven and earth, then they would stop and look up silently from behind. Tianyang was already in existence that he could not catch up to. The top 10 can enter the sacred land and observe the Myriad Pill sacred ceremony. You can also obtain a reward. At this moment, the Dragon Mountain Elder spoke and waved his hand. 10 treasures shrouded in light, and only the strength of their auras could be sensed, appeared in front of the top 10 people. Seeing this, some people's hearts began to burn. Their participation in the Myriad Pill ceremony might not necessarily be for the Myriad Pill sacred ceremony. The rewards of the Myriad Pill ceremony were also quite generous. According to convention, the champion has the right to choose first. Elder Longshan said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. The power of the primordial spirit was released. When he had just broken through to the 5th level of the Wuzun realm, the power of his primordial spirit had increased exponentially. At this moment, he had already reached the terrifying 7th level of the Wuzun realm. Although the light was strong, it could not block the perception of Tianyang's essence spirit. A supreme grade spiritual longsword, a half-saint bead, a peak 7th grade pill formula. Tianyang's eyes seemed to be unfocused, but he was actually able to identify the 10 treasures in his mind. This white bone. Heavenly Sun raised his eyebrows and suddenly looked at the treasure with the weakest light and aura. In his primordial spirit, it was just a piece of white bone that he could not identify. However, when Tianyang saw the white bone, his heart suddenly throbbed inexplicably. Forget it. The other items are not of much use to me. Although I don't know what this white bone is for, it shouldn't be a loss for me to take it. Tianyang muttered to himself. Then, he reached out his hand and took the light where the white bone was. Choose this? Elder Longshan was startled. This treasure had the weakest aura. Among the 10 treasures, there was a half-saint weapon. He did not choose the half-saint weapon. The light disappeared automatically when it landed in Tianyang's hand, revealing the treasure within. It was a piece of white bone. It was spotlessly white, as if it was the purest white in the world. However, no matter how Tianyang used the power of his primordial spirit to investigate it, and even used the myriad things saint path to hit it, the white bone did not react. Then where did that feeling come from? Tianyang felt it was strange, but he casually threw the white bone into his space bag. As for Elder Longshan, he looked at the white bone with a strange expression. He had casually found this thing in Banten Simeon's treasury. He did not know which senior had brought it back. It was originally used to make up the numbers, but in the end, it was taken by the chief. This was a little dramatic. Then, the remaining 9 people also chose their own treasures. This old man still hasn't given up. At this moment, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. He noticed that not far away, Wu Zun at the peak was looking at him with a gaze full of malice. The corners of his mouth could not help but curl into a smile. Then, next, let's go to the Banten Simeon sacred ground to observe the myriad pill sacred cannon. Elder Longshan shouted in a low voice. In the next moment, he waved his hand. A spatial door instantly opened. The top 10 followed Elder Longshan and stepped into the spatial door. Wu Zun at the peak pondered for a moment and followed. Immortal clouds were ethereal and boundless. A great hall seemed to be located in the sky. It was surrounded by clouds and mist, and it was impossible to see clearly. However, a powerful and terrifying pressure was emitted from the great hall. It suppressed the heavens and the earth. That is the place where my Banten Simeon keeps the myriad pill sacred cannon. Even my Banten Simeon has to be an intersect elite disciple to have the chance to observe the myriad pill sacred cannon for a day once a year. As for you, you can stay here and observe for 10 days and 10 nights. Elder Longshan said as he looked at the ethereal great hall in the sky. Even with his half-step saint realm, he was still a little excited. After all, the myriad pill sacred cannon came from the hands of a saint. It was even more powerful than an ordinary saint's item. The alchemy saint who created the myriad pill sacred cannon was also a terrifying existence who had almost transcended the saint realm and stepped into the realm above the saint realm. Even the saint who was overseeing Banten Simeon was far from being able to compare to the terrifying existence who created the myriad pill sacred cannon in terms of cultivation and alchemy. Facing the creation of such an existence, Elder Longshan naturally felt incomparable reverence. However, although this myriad pill sacred cannon is incomplete, it is still extremely difficult to comprehend. If you can't comprehend it, don't force yourself. Otherwise, if the myriad pill sacred cannon activates its power, your primordial spirit will definitely be severely injured. Perhaps it will be difficult to recover even after a few decades. Elder Longshan warned. Hearing this, everyone nodded slightly. For such a saint's item, it was naturally best to be as cautious as possible. Even if it was incomplete, it was the same. It's a pity that the myriad pill sacred cannon is still incomplete. Otherwise, with this half-step Saint Emperor's item guarding my Banten Simeon, why would I worry about not being strong? The Dragon Mountain old man suddenly sighed softly. Then, he led the crowd into the palace in the sky. As if sensing the aura on Elder Longshan's body, the great hall automatically opened. The top 10, plus Elder Longshan and Peak Wu Zun, a total of 12 people entered the great hall. As soon as they entered, they didn't even have time to size up their surroundings. Everyone's gazes were unconsciously attracted to the great cannon in the center of the great hall. silver-white light, and streams of powerful saint might that didn't have the slightest bit of pressure filled the surroundings. Even if they hadn't started to observe and comprehend it, they could feel that their alchemy cultivation was slowly rising. This was simply a divine item. Chapter 1077. And this is only a fragment. Everyone's faces were filled with shock when they felt the changes in their bodies. Almost all the cultivators in the Shintian Great World knew that the myriad pill cannon was incomplete, a treasure created by an existence that had almost surpassed the Saint Realm, yet it was incomplete. Who knew how many people had been hurt by this? But now, everyone suddenly felt as if the myriad pill cannon wasn't incomplete at all. It still possessed such terrifying power. I wonder what kind of terrifying power this myriad pill cannon has when it's complete. Everyone's hearts trembled. There were high and low saints. The weakest saints were those that had just broken through not long ago. Their strength wasn't much stronger than a half-saint. However, those like the myriad phenomenon saints were the rarest of the best among saints. The creator of the myriad pill sacred canon was most likely a supreme existence even among saints. 10 days and 10 nights. 3 minutes have passed. Elder Dragon Mountain spoke at this moment. Everyone was startled and instantly came to their senses. They all found a place to sit down cross-legged and madly cultivate. Previously, just by standing to the side, the myriad pill cannon had stimulated their alchemy cultivation to slowly increase. Now, as they cultivated, all kinds of insights automatically appeared in their minds. The problems that had been difficult to solve in the past were now easily solved. It was as if the area around the myriad pill sacred canon was a powerful alchemy domain. Tianyang narrowed his eyes and also sat down cross-legged. He could feel the myriad pill cannon in his body, which had already merged with the Xianming fire cauldron, trembling, throbbing. The myriad pill cannon had been incomplete for so many years, and most of the fragments had already been recovered. If Tianyang's guess was correct, the myriad pill cannon in Tianyang's possession was the last fragment of the myriad pill cannon. It was no wonder that Tianyang had come to the Shintian Great World by relying on the strength of the endless spirit sea to travel such a long distance through the Milky Way. And this was the result of Tianyang going straight all the way. The myriad pill cannon had leaped all the way from the Shintian Great World to the Tianshao Great World. There were thousands of worlds in the boundless galaxy. Just the black heaven great cosmos alone was enough to make one wonder how many worlds existed. It would be fine if they flew to the surrounding worlds. With the saints' abilities, they might be able to find them. However, they had flown directly to the Tianshao Great World, which was very far away, so it was impossible to find them. Now Tianyang could feel it. The myriad pill scripture had a terrifying attraction to the myriad pill scripture within his body. At the same time, he could feel his incomparable thirst for the myriad pill scripture. If it weren't for the profound underworld fire cauldron, the myriad pill scripture would have already flown out of Tianyang's body and merged with it. Although it's a pity I'm not a saint. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly as he circulated the power of his primordial spirit. He was not a merciful man. What did it have to do with him that the relic of the Banten Simeon was missing? If the myriad pill scripture could be restored and given to him, Tianyang might have considered it. However, there was no such thing now. Not only did Tianyang not want to merge the myriad pill scripture with the myriad pill scripture, but he also wanted to steal it. He was even thinking about how to steal something from the myriad pill scripture. Attract! Tianyang roared in his heart. In the next moment, the myriad pill scripture suddenly blossomed with rays of light. A tyrannical attracting force was released from the myriad pill scripture and instantly connected with the enormous myriad pill scripture. It was as if it wanted to forcibly pull out the essence of the myriad pill scripture and merge it with the myriad pill scripture. However, even if the myriad pill scripture and the myriad pill scripture came from the same source, it was still extremely difficult to attract them. Fortunately, there are 10 days and 10 nights. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. Since he had already established a connection, he had achieved his goal of participating in the myriad pill scripture. although he didn't know how many copies of the myriad pill scripture there were. Based on his current speed, 10 days and 10 nights would at least raise the grade of the myriad pill scripture by countless times. He might even be able to perfect a few more lesser saint grade pill recipes, or even saint grade pill recipes. Then, it's time for me to cultivate. Tianyang chuckled softly, closed his eyes, and immersed himself in the surrounding alchemy energy. Countless difficult problems became clear at this moment. As he cultivated, Tianyang's alchemy cultivation also rose rapidly. Unknowingly, 3 days had already passed. There were already people who couldn't bear the pressure of the myriad pill scripture and had no choice but to withdraw from their cultivation state. This myriad pill scripture is really terrifying. 3 days and 3 nights gave me the feeling that I didn't even understand 1/10,000th of the mysteries of the myriad pill scripture. Chunlun woke up and felt his alchemy cultivation advancing by leaps and bounds. His face was full of shock. His alchemy cultivation had been stuck at the peak of grade 7 for a long time, stuck at this bottleneck. However, under the influence of the myriad pill scripture, he had improved greatly. Over the past 3 days, Zhang Xian's cultivation had improved immensely. Right now, he was already on the verge of reaching minor saint. If he cultivated diligently in the future, it wouldn't be difficult to step into lesser saint grade. It's a pity that 3 days is already full. Chun Luan sighed. Previously, he was like a hungry wolf trapped in a cage. When he encountered a delicacy like the myriad pill scripture, he naturally couldn't wait to eat his fill. However, no matter how hungry a wolf was, there was still a limit to its capacity. Now, Chunluan had reached his limit, and with him was Tang Yu. The 3 rookies were still rookies after all. They couldn't be compared to the older generation of alchemists like Yinan Feng. However, Yang Tian, this guy, is really a monster. Chunlun glanced at Tianyang, who was still sitting cross-legged on the fishing platform and cultivating, and couldn't help but praise. Until now, it couldn't be seen that Tianyang had the slightest bit of exhaustion. If they were said to be hungry wolves, then Tianyang was a hungry tiger, a hungry whale, and a hungry dragon. This myriad pill scripture was Tianyang's best nourishment. Around Tianyang, unique and powerful alchemy runes had even formed, and only he could comprehend them. Even a lesser saint grade Hua Dumeing, Jiangdu, and Yinan Feng didn't have such a phenomenon. Huh! At this moment, Tianyang suddenly roared. In his eyes, a resplendent light bloomed from Xinguang. The strange alchemy runes that coiled around his body suddenly shone with a resplendent light, illuminating the entire hall. And in Tianyang's body, inside the myriad pill scripture, sacred runes flickered one after another. Mysterious fluctuations covered the entire hall. This is Yinan Feng, and the others instantly opened their eyes and looked at Tianyang. The corners of Elder Long Shan's mouth curled up. Wu Zun's pupils constricted as he stared at Tianyang. Done! Tianyang roared. The surrounding runes instantly transformed into sacred runes and entered Tianyang's body. An aura that transcended heaven and earth suddenly emanated from Tianyang's body. Faintly, it was somewhat similar to the myriad pill scripture. Alchemy. Chapter 1078. Alchemy Dao, Sage Realm. Everyone except Tang Yu and Chunluan were stunned when they sensed the familiar and terrifying aura. Sage Realm Alchemy Dao? Judging from the aura, he must have just entered. However, Yang Tian was already able to refine minor divine grade elixirs. How could he have just reached Sage Realm Alchemy Dao? This? Yinan Feng was stunned. What Dumeng reacted instantly. What did he use to complete the power of the holy path in the minor divine grade elixir? In the next moment, everyone was stunned. The minor divine grade elixir definitely contained the power of the holy path. However, Tianyang had just entered Sage Realm Alchemy Dao. In other words, Tianyang had another holy path before. At this moment, he had 2 holy paths. Tianyang was only Wu Zun Realm Level 5 at the moment. Such talent! Hua Dumeng muttered. Hua Dumeng mumbled to himself. His eyes were filled with disbelief. I'm afraid he's no longer a peerless genius from an ordinary sage sect. Could this fellow be from the Void Mountain? What Dumaying said in a low voice. However, Tianyang had just broken through, and his five senses were extremely sharp. Even Jiang Du could not hear Hua Dumaying's exclamation. He was still in control of it. Void Mountain? Tianyang raised his eyebrows. When Tianyang had intimidated Wu Zun Realm Palace Master in Donghai State, he had borrowed the name of Void Mountain. However, the origin of Void Mountain was extremely mysterious. Although Tianyang had investigated it afterward, he had not found anything. Now, he had heard the same thing from Hua Dumaying's mouth. Do all people from Void Mountain have two holy paths? Tianyang muttered to himself. He now had the All Creations Tao, Sage Realm, Sword Tao, Life and Death Tao, and the Sage Realm Alchemy Tao that he had just advanced to. It was just 4 holy paths. He had gone through many hardships and dangers. He had only comprehended the Sage Realm, Sword Tao, and Life and Death Tao after dying once. No matter how powerful the people of the Void Mountain were, it was impossible for them to have died once and still have 2 holy paths. It seemed that the Void Mountain was somewhat terrifying. However, no matter how strong you are, it has nothing to do with me. Tianyang shrugged, then sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. He had just entered the Pill Tao of the Saint Realm. Just nice. There were still 7 days left. He could use it to consolidate his cultivation. Tianyang felt something. If he were to refine the stellar absolute Saint Dan again, it would definitely be much smoother than the first time. Unfortunately, the ingredients for the Saintly Star Pill were too rare. Even in Saint Song Qing's cave, there was only one set. Tianyang had no chance to refine it, even if he wanted to. It could still be cultivated? Seeing this, Chen Luan's eyes widened. It must be fake. Tianyang was still able to absorb the power of the myriad pill cannon after breaking through to the Sage Realm. What was this guy's upper limit? Time passed quickly. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. 10 days and 10 nights have passed. Those who are cultivating, leave the main hall. Elder Long Shan shouted. In the next moment, his voice reverberated in the main hall like a great bell. The 10,000 pill sacred cannon also unleashed powerful ripples that woke up everyone who was cultivating. It's actually here so quickly. Yinan Feng smacked his lips, his face full of pity. The myriad pill cannon was an opportunity that could only be encountered by chance. Even the myriad pill cannon was only held once every few decades. Now that Yinan Feng was in the top 10, he would not be allowed to come again. He would only be able to participate again after 300 years. Otherwise, if those in the top 10 came every year, wouldn't the myriad pill cannon be taken over by them? Yes, it's too short. Jiang Du also sighed. Although these 10 days and nights were too short for their cultivation time, it was still too short. However, the effect of the myriad pill cannon was something that they might not be able to achieve even if they cultivated in seclusion for decades. Seeing this, Tang Yu, who had been watching silently since the 3rd day, was speechless. You've at least completed 10 days, but they didn't even have 10 days. Although the myriad pill cannon was a great opportunity, it was also a test of one's endurance. Not everyone could comprehend such a majestic Saint Tao. In the end, only 4 people persisted until the end. Yinan Feng, Jiang Du, Hua Dumaying, and Tianyang. It's all right. Tianyang's lips curled up, revealing a satisfied smile. In the remaining 3 days, Tianyang consumed the Saintly Star Pill that he had refined. As his alchemy Tao skyrocketed, so did the power of his primordial spirit. Not only had Tianyang's alchemy Tao reached the Saint Realm, but his primordial spirit had also soared to the peak of Wu Zun's 7th layer. He was only half a step away from Wu Zun's 8th layer. Hua Dumaying was speechless when he heard this. You've cultivated for 10 days and 10 nights in the myriad pill cannon, and you've even broken through a major realm. Although Tianyang's foundation was the weakest among the top 10, Tianyang was undoubtedly the one who had benefited the most in these 10 days. Just the Saint Realm alchemy Tao alone was enough to make this trip worthwhile. In fact, Tianyang's gains weren't limited to this. As if affected by Tianyang's breakthrough, The speed at which the myriad pill cannon was summoning the myriad pill cannon increased in the remaining 7 days. At this moment, apart from the fragments, all the pill recipes in the myriad pill cannon, and even some of the Saint Realm insights left behind by the Bantan Saint, existed in the myriad pill cannon. It could be said that Tianyang now had a Saint Realm item in his body, a Saint Realm alchemy Dao and a Saint Realm treasure. In this myriad pill cannon, he had obtained 2 things that even Wu Zun could only dream of. This didn't include the true flames of destruction that had evolved from devouring the true dragon heart fire in the heaven-burning fire vein. This time, Tianyang participated in the myriad pill cannon. He had profited greatly. Then, apart from those with sex, I wonder who is willing to join my Bantan Simian. Everyone left the hall and stood in the sky. The Dragon Mountain Elder's eyes flickered as he swept his gaze across the 10 people and smiled. The myriad pill cannon had a total of 3 benefits. The first was the basic ranking reward. The second was naturally the myriad pill cannon. The third was the current recruitment of Bantan Simian. Chun Luan and Tang Yu's eyes shone brightly. Other than the myriad pill cannon, they had come to the myriad pill cannon to join the Bantan Simian. Yinan Feng and the others took a step back. They had either created their own factions or were used to freedom. Naturally, they couldn't join the Bantan Simian. However, there were still 6 people who stayed. Tianyang stood in the same place, not moving at all. I wonder what you think, Yang Tian. My Bantan Simian is not only strong in the Tao of pills, but also in the Tao of martial arts. The Dragon Mountain Elder stared at Tianyang and smiled. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to speak, Wu Zun's piercing voice suddenly rang out. Chapter 1079. I, the Bantan Simian, will never accept such a despicable person. Wu Zun at the peak roared, sneering as he approached Tianyang. Elder Long Shan frowned. Junior brother, what's going on? He had just extended an olive branch to Tianyang, and now his junior brother was trying to undermine him? Although this guy had repeatedly slapped his disciple, Yi Yuan, in the face, it shouldn't be to this extent. Furthermore, the Dragon Mountain Elder carefully sized up Tianyang. He couldn't see anything despicable about Tianyang. Wu Zun at the peak sneered. Senior brother, you may know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. Don't be fooled by this guy. Who knows how many masters of disguise there are in this world? Wu Zun at the peak mocked. Even a 3-year-old child could hear the mockery in his words. He didn't hide his hostility at all. Chun Luan and the others also looked at Tianyang in surprise, their faces full of confusion. What did Tianyang do? How could he make Wu Zun at the peak target him like this? Looking at Wu Zun at the peak, it seemed like there was some proof. Tianyang, on the other hand, had an indifferent expression, with a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Wu Zun at the peak finally couldn't hold back his revenge. If that was the case, he wanted to see what this guy could do. Junior brother, what are you? Elder Long Shan's face darkened, and he said with a serious expression, Senior brother, do you know why Yi Yuan didn't come to the final round to participate in the myriad pill ceremony? Wu Zun at the peak asked. Hearing that, everyone's heart skipped a beat, and they all thought of the reason. Yi Yuan was someone who showed off his abilities at the medicine fair a few months ago, displaying his incomparable talent in alchemy. He refined a divine pill and was accepted as a disciple by Wu Zun at the scene. He was known as one of the 3 great rising stars. However, the other 2 of the 3 great rising stars were already here. Yi Yuan, on the other hand, did not come. This was indeed extremely puzzling. What's going on? The Dragon Mountain Elder arrived. He seemed to have some guesses in his mind. However, when Tianyang heard this, his expression remained calm. What was the point of Wu Zun revealing this matter at this time? Yi Yuan was killed by Yang Tian. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, roared with a face full of hatred, and he was killed by an extremely insidious method. Since I've accepted Yi Yuan as my disciple, it's only natural that I'm concerned about his every move. However, in the second round, in the burning heaven fire vein, Yang Tian had been following Yi Yuan since the beginning. After Yi Yuan obtained a considerable amount of burning heaven fire crystals, he suddenly launched a sneak attack and killed him. Before the myriad pills ceremony began, Yi Yuan told me that it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. He doesn't intend to pursue the grudge between him and Yang Tian. However, I didn't expect Yang Tian to be so ruthless as to directly launch a sneak attack and kill him. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, roared with grief and indignation. It was as if Yi Yuan's death really pained him. As for the surrounding people, their gazes towards Tianyang changed slightly. Apart from Chen Luan and Tang Yu, who understood the cause and effect of the matter, as well as the 3 minor saint alchemists, who were still calm, everyone else subconsciously took a few steps back. "So, what are you trying to say?" Heavenly Sun suddenly asked with a faint smile on his face. "What are you trying to say? A piece of trash. If he's dead, then he's dead. Is there a need for the great Wu Zun, who is at his peak, to play dumb here? Come on." Tianyang smiled, and a ball of icy blue flames suddenly rose from his hand. Back then, after killing Yi Yuan, he had not yet devoured it. It was still stored in his space bag, the heavenly ice flame. Seeing the heavenly ice flame, everyone's pupil shrank. Like the divine alchemy cauldron, the heavenly ice flame was an inheritance of the medicine god sect. Together with the divine alchemy cauldron, it was inherited by Yi Yuan. However, it was now in Tianyang's hands. In other words, Tianyang had really killed Yi Yuan. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, was instantly enraged. You used despicable means to take revenge for the smallest grievance. It's one thing for you to kill my disciple. Now, you dare to take out my disciple's inheritance in front of me. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, roared angrily. In the next moment, Wu Zun's terrifying true origin, which was at the peak of ninth heaven, was released. It turned into a true origin giant hammer and smashed down heavily on Tianyang. Senior brother, not only is this brat vengeful, but his methods are also extremely vicious. Back then, Yi Yuan's soul was forcefully extracted just to find the method to refine the divine alchemy cauldron and the heavenly ice flame. This kind of person can't be allowed into my Bantan Semyon. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, wailed. His eyes shone with greed. Using the excuse of being caught in a hurry, he only needed to think a little to find a loophole. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, didn't care at all. As long as he could persuade the Dragon Mountain Elder, it was fine. In the Shantian Great World, martial arts reigned supreme. As long as the Dragon Mountain Elder didn't make a move, he could do whatever he wanted with Tianyang. When the time came, not only would he pry the formula of the saintly stellar pill out of Tianyang's hands, but he would also obtain the psychic fire, the cauldron, and the 2 saint paths. He specialized in martial arts, but none of his daos had reached the saint realm. Now, Tianyang, who had 2 saint paths but was powerless, was his best prey. The Dragon Mountain Elder could also see that Wu Zun, who was at his peak, had attacked Tianyang purely because of himself. He had said so much before, but in reality, it was just an excuse to fool everyone. In reality, Wu Zun, who was at his peak, wanted to kill Tianyang and steal his treasures. So what's the use of saying so much nonsense? At this moment, Tianyang suddenly shook his head. The inner yuan in his hand suddenly shone with a strange light. In the next moment, a terrifying xingguang was released in the Great Hall. An incomparably powerful sword light violently slashed out. It pierced through the heavens and the earth, bringing with it the power of the primordial spirit, inner yuan, and the power of the Dragon King. 10,000 swords to the origin. Tianyang roared. The great void sword embryo in his hand shone with xingguang and collided violently with the giant hammer. Boom! In an instant, the surrounding space trembled. The clouds and mist were swept away by the shockwave. Apart from Yinan Feng, Hu Dumeng, and Jiangdu, everyone else in the area took a few steps back. Everyone took a few steps back, their faces filled with disbelief. Tianyang had actually blocked Wu Zun's attack. Interesting. Tianyang took a few steps back. He felt the power coming from the great void sword embryo, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Is this the power of Wu Zun, who was at his peak? Ever since he had broken through, Tianyang had always wanted to test how big the gap was between him and Wu Zun, who was at his peak. Now that he looked at it, there was a gap, but it was already extremely small. Dragon power? At this moment, the Dragon Mountain Elder's pupils suddenly shrank. He revealed a look of shock. Why do you have dragon power in your body? Chapter 1080. Dragon Force? The Dragon Mountain Elder looked at the boundless dragon force contained in Tianyang's sword and was shocked beyond belief. Why was it that Long Tianqing, who had slaughtered millions of humans and was known as the human butcher Wu Zun, was still undefeated in the Eastern Sky Divine region? Apart from Long Tianqing's strength and ability to escape, the most important thing was that he had the dragon tribe behind him. It would be fine if Long Tianqing had been banished by the dragon tribe. However, Long Tianqing was still able to use the Dragon Heart Seal to subdue the true Dragon Heart Fire in the True Dragon Palace. It was clear that Long Tianqing's status in the dragon tribe was not low. Unless there was a deep grudge between them, very few human factions would attack the dragon tribe. After all, they were different from the strongest human factions in the Sky Continent. The dragon tribe was the overlord of the Xintian Great Cosmos. If they were united, they could stand up to the humans and even have the upper hand. Long Tianqing only killed people, not people from any faction. Therefore, Long Tianqing could move around as he pleased. At most, he would guard against those who were just. As for Lin Tianchong, he could only tremble in fear and hide everywhere. You're from the dragon tribe? The Dragon Mountain Elder attacked in an instant. He punched out and destroyed Wu Zun's attack. In the next moment, he wiped away Tianyang's sword with a swipe of his hand. Following this, he unleashed a powerful aura, forcing the Peak Martial Highness and Tianyang Martial Highness to take a few steps back. Tianyang's heart skipped a beat when he saw the Dragon Mountain Elder's lightning-fast attack. Half-saint, he really was a half-saint. Xintian Wuzun was already the strongest person Tianyang had ever seen. Even Wu Zun, who was at his peak, was no match for Xintian Wuzun. However, Xintian Wuzun's methods were not enough in front of the Dragon Mountain Elder. After all, the Dragon Mountain Elder was half a step into the Saint Realm. He was a peak half-saint who stood at the gate of the Saint Realm. Dragon Tribe. Wu Zun's pupils shrank when he heard this. He stared at Tianyang in disbelief. How could he be from the Dragon Clan? With how arrogant the Dragon Clan was, how could they possibly participate in the Myriad Pills ceremony with a bunch of humans? Tianyang was also stunned when he heard this. Hearing the astonished tone of the Dragon Mountain Old Man, it seemed that the Dragon Clan held quite a high status in his heart. Tianyang pondered for a moment, then smiled and nodded. Sort of. In any case, he had already assumed the identity of a person from the Void Mountain. There was no harm in assuming the identity of a member of the Dragon Clan. The dragon power in his body was the purest dragon power of the ancestral dragon. If Tianyang stepped into the Saint Path, the Dragon Force would automatically evolve into Dragon Saint Force. By then, even if Tianyang refused to admit it, the Dragon Clan would find a way to pull Tianyang into the Dragon Clan. Now that Tianyang had this dragon power, who dared to say that he was not a member of the Dragon Clan? There were countless branches of the Dragon Clan. Even the most powerful force of the Dragon Clan did not dare to say that they controlled all the bloodlines of the Dragon Clan. Tianyang was now a member of the Dragon Clan. Sort of. The Dragon Mountain Old Man was stunned when he heard this. Just as he was about to say something, a dragon tattoo appeared on Tianyang's body. The terrifying dragon power of the Dragon King was released. It suppressed the entire space. Sort of. At this moment, Tianyang smiled again. Everyone was completely stunned when they saw this. Tianyang's dragon power of the Dragon King was not considered strong. Even Yi Nanfeng might not be able to suppress it. However, it was not the strength of the Dragon King's dragon power that could suppress them. It was the dragon power itself. Dragon power meant that the purity of one's bloodline had reached a certain level. This dragon power was so pure, the Dragon Mountain Old Man's face revealed an extremely shocked expression. Could it be a pure-blooded true dragon? The face of the peak marshal venerable beside him turned completely gloomy. A pure-blooded true dragon. How could it be a pure-blooded true dragon? If that was the case, how was he going to attack Tianyong? He really is a member of the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Mountain old man's face darkened and became extremely serious. In the next moment, he shot a furious gaze at Wu Zun. The Dragon Clan was not in existence that Bantan Simeon could afford to offend. Wu Zun at the peak dared to attack a pure-blooded true dragon. That meant that he was provoking the entire Dragon Clan. When that happened, the Dragon Clan would be furious. The sky would fall and the earth would be destroyed. Zhang Tianqua, the Dragon Mountain old man, roared as if he wanted to eat Wu Zun at the peak. Look at what you've done. Zhang Tianqua was Wu Zun at the peak. Wu Zun at the peak's face darkened. He stared at Tianyong with unwillingness in his eyes. Why? Why was this kid a member of the Dragon Clan? The two saintly paths that he had been dreaming of, the various pill recipes, and the extraordinary weapon had almost fallen into his hands. However, because of 2 words, it was gone. But he killed my disciple. Don't you know how he killed him? If Yi Yuan hadn't attacked Yang Tian first, how could Yang Tian have killed him? The Dragon Mountain old man roared angrily, his heart trembling slightly. Pure-blooded Dragon Clan, 2 saint paths, and Wu Zun at the 5th level of the Dragon Realm. To be able to nurture such a genius, it must be a terrifying force of the Dragon Clan. If Yang Tian was dissatisfied, he would go back and talk to him. Bantan Simeon would not be destroyed, but they would definitely suffer a great loss. On the side, Tianyong was still watching coldly from the sidelines. This was the reality of the martial Dao world. If you were strong, you could do whatever you wanted. You only needed a casually made-up reason to kill and seize. You didn't even need a reason. And if the other party was stronger, then, even if it was black, it could become white, and white could become even whiter. I could tell from the beginning that Yi Yuan had been targeting Yang Tian since the first round. Moreover, before the first round, the 2 sides had already formed a grudge. Yang Tian had the strength to kill Yi Yuan, but he didn't make a move. Obviously, he didn't want to care about this matter. On the other hand, it was Yi Yuan who kept pestering him. The Dragon Mountain old man roared angrily. Hearing this, Zhang Tianqua's expression turned ugly. However, Yi Yuan is a genius who can refine a divine pill. The divine pill wasn't refined by him. At this moment, Tang Yu suddenly spoke. Instantly, the entire place fell silent. Countless astonished and shocked gazes looked at Tang Yu. What did you say? Hearing this, the Peak Wu Zun and Zhang Tianqua were stunned as they stared at Tang Yu. Little guy, don't think that you can spout nonsense just because Tang Shaoan is behind you. When I arrived, Yi Yuan and Yang Tian had a battle of alchemy. After Yang Tian refined the divine pill, he left. You only arrived after that. However, Yi Yuan beat you to it. At this moment, Chen Luan also spoke. 2 out of the 3 rookies had already spoken. There was no need to find any more evidence for this accuracy. Zhang Tianqua's expression changed. Could it be that Yi Yuan had been lying to him all this time? He even treated him like his own son and taught him countless times. On the other hand, Tianyong calmly looked at the 2 Bantan Simeon guys fighting each other. His expression was calm. You guys continue. I originally wanted to take a look at this Bantan Simeon, but I'm too lazy to enter. Tianyong casually waved his hand, and the space automatically opened up a space door. He stepped out. He disappeared from everyone's sight. Seeing this, the Dragon Mountain old man was instantly heartbroken and looked at Zhang Tianqua furiously. Look at what you've done. Then, leaving behind a space door, he flicked his sleeves and left. Everyone did not dare to stay any longer and left the space one after another, leaving Zhang Tianqua alone. Damn it. Even if I was deceived, it's a fact that you disobeyed me. Everyone left, and a ferocious expression appeared on Zhang Tianqua's face. I can't touch you, but there are plenty of people who dare to touch you. So what if you're from the Dragon Clan? A Dragon Clan that no one knows about is not a Dragon Clan. In the next moment, Zhang Tianqua took out a communication token with trembling hands. The other party. Chapter 1081. The spatial door opened. Tianyang's expression was indifferent. He took a step forward and arrived outside the space, within a 10,000 dan sign of ill. Immediately, tens of millions of alchemists focused their gazes on Tianyang. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, Tianyang's expression did not change at all. He even glanced at his right hand. The boundary-breaking talisman, which had been shining with a brilliant light, had turned into ashes at this moment. Pretending to be a dragon is really a loss. Tianyang's expression was as calm as an ancient well, but his heart was in so much pain that it almost dripped blood. He had refined quite a few of these boundary-breaking talismans in the Tianxiao Great World. However, for the space of the Bantan Simun's sacred realm, no matter how strong the boundary-breaking talisman that Tianyang had obtained before was, it was just so. It was impossible to shake the space of the Bantan Simun sacred realm in the slightest. In order to almost maintain his identity as a dragon, Tianyang could only take out the boundary-breaking talisman that he had obtained from Saint Songqing's cave abode. The boundary-breaking talisman refined by a saint could naturally easily break open space. However, in order to pretend to do this, Tianyang had almost burned tens of millions of Reiki. No wonder Tianyang was so pained. Of course, Tianyang had obtained even more things from the Myriad Pill sacred tome. Just the alchemy of stepping into the sacred realm was enough to make up for all of Tianyang's losses, or even more. After all, for Wu Zun, Reiki was already a worldly possession. On the other hand, the sacred path was an existence that could only be encountered by chance. Not to mention tens of millions of Reiki in exchange for a sacred path, even if it was hundreds of millions, billions, or tens of billions, as long as Tianyang was willing, they could even go bankrupt. Among them, Wu Zun, who had a huge force but was unable to break through for a long time, was the most important. Moreover, compared to the sacred realm alchemy Dao, what was more valuable was the changes in the Myriad Pill sacred tome. From a remnant, it directly extracted countless essences from the main body, and even engraved all the pill formulas and alchemy experience on it. In other words, apart from the imprint of the saint who was half a step beyond the domain of the saint realm and the energy it contained, there was almost no difference between the Myriad Pill sacred tome and the Myriad Pill sacred tome. He had obtained a saint item and increased his saint path by 1. This was much more powerful than a plain breaking talisman. Just as Tianyang was staring blankly at the ashes in his hand. Next to him, another space door opened. Yi and the others walked out of it mountain. For some reason, the Dragon Mountain Elder also walked out. With an incomparably complicated gaze, he glanced at Tianyang before turning his head away. Tianyang couldn't be blamed for this. From the very beginning, Tianyang had been the weaker party. Unfortunately, fate made fools of people. The person that Zhang Tianqua had originally wanted to find had turned out to be his enemy, because of an imposter. Even now, due to his identity as a member of the dragon race, he had no choice but to suppress it. But with Dragon Mountain's elder's understanding of his junior brother, Zhang Tianqua would not let it go. However, Tianyang could only pray for his own good fortune. 10 days of meditation is over. At this moment, Dragon Mountain's elder roared. His voice spread throughout the entire dance sign of ill. Countless alchemists raised their heads at this moment and looked at the 10 people in the sky with reverence in their eyes. The Myriad Pill sacred tome is over. Dragon Mountain's elder roared. In the next moment, the Bantan Simun's arrangement disappeared like a stream of light. The spirit-gathering arrays automatically turned back into their original array flags and flew into Dragon Mountain's elder's hand. It's finally over. In an inconspicuous corner of the tens of millions of alchemists, Jiang Lin, Wu Qingshun, and Jin Daoping looked at Tianyang, who was standing at the front with a calm expression, and heaved a sigh of relief. The Myriad Pill sacred tome was over. In other words, Tianyang was the true champion of the Myriad Pill sacred tome. Even if Yi Yuan returned, he would not be able to shake Tianyang's position. The person who used his Dan Sign of Ill token had become the champion of the Myriad Pill sacred tome. This honor made Jiang Lin so excited that he almost could not take care of himself. "Excuse me, are you from Dancineville?" At this moment, someone suddenly approached. Looking at the excited Jiang Lin, he smiled respectfully and said, "Thank you. I'm from the CF family, a martial arts family in Dancineville. Coincidentally, we have a son with talent in alchemy. I wonder if he can enter your Dancineville and be trained? If it's possible, I think we can work together a lot." The middle-aged man smiled. Hearing this, Jiang Lin was slightly startled. Then, he immediately reacted. He said with a face full of smiles, "We can discuss." In the next moment, he brought this person to a quiet place nearby. In the distance, the family heads and sect elders who were rushing toward Jiang Lin and the others could not help but gnash their teeth in hatred when they saw this scene. F***CK. The CF family beat us to it. Yang Tian. Actually, I'm from Bantan Xinyan. At this moment, the Dragon Mountain Elder spoke and transmitted his voice to Tianyang. Tianyang's talent in alchemy and martial arts was simply too strong. For such a peerless genius, even the halo of the Dragon Clan could not overshadow Tianyang's brilliance. If Tianyang did not die prematurely, he would definitely be a rising star in the future of the Xiantian great world. In fact, compared to some of the young super geniuses who were already at the peak of Wuzun, he had much more potential. After all, most of those peak Wuzun had improved too quickly and could not find their own saint path. As for Tianyang, although his cultivation level was only at Wuzun Stage 5, he had already found his own saint path. If he did not die, he would definitely reach the saint path. Even the 10,000 An sacred sect had to pay attention to a future Saint Realm Supreme expert. Saints were one of the most powerful beings in the Xiantian great world. "I've made up my mind," Tianyang said calmly. Hearing this, the Dragon Mountain Elder could not help but look a little disappointed. In his heart, he hated his junior brother even more. If it were not for him, how could Tianyang not join Bantan Xinyan? How could he, Bantan Xinyan, lose a super genius like Tianyang? At this moment, a stream of light suddenly shot over from afar. In the next moment, an extremely sharp sword light ruthlessly slashed out and slashed in front of Tianyang. All of a sudden, an inch in front of Tianyang's feet, a startling ray of light was chopped out. "What's going on?" Seeing this, the tens of millions of people who had yet to disperse were stunned. At this moment, a disdainful snort was heard. "Luo Qiangshu, guardian of the Medicine God sect, is here to experience Master Yang's skills." "Master Yang, since you dared to kill the heir of the Medicine God sect, I'm sure your martial strength is not weak. I wonder if I'll be lucky enough to test Master Yang's sword." In the sky, a figure shot toward Tianyang with disdain and disdain. The aura on his body was Wuzun Stage 6, guardian of the Medicine God sect. At this moment, someone exclaimed, "Isn't that the strongest martial prodigy nurtured by the Medicine God sect? I heard that Luo Qiangshu can already fight Wuzun Stage 7. Why is he looking for trouble with Yang Tian? Didn't you hear what he said? Yang Tian killed the heir of the Medicine God sect, Yi Yuan." At this moment, a young master who had been ruthlessly slapped in the face by Tianyang sneered. "Yi Yuan died at the hands of Yang Tian. The Medicine God sect will definitely not let this matter rest. Now, as soon as the Myriad Pill ceremony is over, they'll immediately come. I want to see now if the champion of the Myriad Pill ceremony will run or die in the face of a martial prodigy." The young master laughed disdainfully. How strong could an alchemist be? Against a martial prodigy nurtured by the Medicine God sect, it was obvious. There is only death. At this moment, Tianyang glanced at the figure in the sky and spoke leisurely. "Forget about testing the sword." Hearing this, a mocking smile appeared on the young master's face. Chapter 1082. After a power cut and reboot, the computer's time changed to August 8th, 13548. Perhaps the computer had let loose, but the result was that the computer could not access the backend, so the 2 chapters written could not be published. It was already in the computer, but it could not be published. Chapter 1083. I'll give you a handicap because you're not worthy of my sword. Tianyang's faint laughter resounded in the center of Dan Sinaville. Immediately, the tens of millions of people present heard this chuckle loud and clear. Everyone could not help but be slightly stunned. The next moment, there was an uproar. Eldest young master also let out an incomparably sharp and ear-piercing laugh. Ha ha! Give you a handicap? Who does he think he is? The strongest genius of the Xiantian great world? Not to mention that he's only Wu Zun's 5th stage. Even if he's Wu Zun's 6th stage, so what? How can he be Luo Qiangshu's match? I guess he's been blinded by the myriad pill ceremony's first place. He really thinks he's invincible. Eldest young master laughed wantonly. No one present understood Luo Qiangshu's combat strength better than him. After all, when he had just stepped into Wu Zun's realm, he had been challenged by Luo Qiangshu, who was only half a step into Wu Zun's realm. At that time, he had thought that he could easily suppress Luo Qiangshu. Who would have thought that Luo Qiangshu would easily defeat him? Later, he heard from the medicine god sect. He was only there to let Luo Qiangshu relax. This was because Luo Qiangshu was going to challenge someone who had already reached the peak of Wu Zun's realm, a sword genius from Sage's sect. In the end, Luo Qiangshu still won. It was an extremely beautiful victory. At that time, it had been nearly 100 years ago. Now that 100 years had passed, Luo Qiangshu's strength would definitely increase. In fact, it would increase at a faster speed than before. How could Tianyang, who was 1.5 stages lower than Luo Qiangshu, be a match for Luo Qiangshu? Hearing this, the figure in midair that looked down upon the world suddenly stopped, and in the next moment, a voice that was filled with boundless rage erupted. Arrogant! Do you know who I, Luo Qiangshu, am? In the next moment, the figure rushed down like a thunderbolt and arrived in front of Tianyang. Surging waves of air spread out in all directions. The rolling air currents directly forced the thousands of people around to retreat. Some people were even injured because of this. However, Luo Qiangshu didn't even look at them. His face was full of anger as he shouted at Tianyang. I, Luo Qiangshu, started cultivating at the age of 3. At the age of 5, I cultivated a low-grade heaven-level cultivation technique, defeating all geniuses of the same age. 7 years old, Hua Yuan, it was discovered that he possessed a sword spirit physique. From then on, he traveled the world with a sword and swept away all his enemies. At the age of 17, he defeated the famous sword Dao prodigy Su Minghua and entered the medicine god sect, stepping into the Dao fire realm. 39 years old, 1 man and 1 sword, calmed the chaos within the Scarlet Python Fire Nation. Amidst tens of thousands of troops, he killed a 3rd-level Sea of Soul Realm king and stepped in a Sea of Soul Realm. At the age of 88, I gave my love to my sword. I rode on my sword and traveled the divine land of the eastern sky to comprehend the Great Path. I killed hundreds of reaching heaven states in a row and proved my great path. Master, 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 of the sword of the heaven, of the sword of the sword master. As Luo Qiangshu spoke, his anger turned into a sneer. At the age of 225, I cultivated a half-step saint-level cultivation technique and stepped into the Wu Zun realm. From then on, I became a guardian of the medicine god sect. Along the way of cultivation, I killed countless cultivators. At the age of 378, I comprehended a trace of the sword Dao of the Saint Realm. After continuous tempering, I condensed my own killing move, the Imperial True Spirit Sword. Now, at the age of 450, I'm Wu Zun Realm at the peak of the 6th level. Luo Qiangshu said proudly as he spoke of his life's experiences. Hearing this, the tens of millions of people below, except for a very small number, fell into incomparable shock. Luo Qiangshu's path of life was incomparably powerful to them. Compared to Luo Qiangshu, any of them seemed to have gone from brilliant to mediocre. No matter how powerful their achievements were, they weren't worth mentioning in front of Luo Qiangshu. No wonder this kid was so arrogant. It turned out that he had the right to be arrogant. Now, do you want me to use my hands and feet, or do you want me to kneel and beg for mercy now? After Luo Qiangshu finished speaking, he looked at Tianyang with disdain. In his eyes, Tianyang was already a dead man. Oh! At this moment, Tianyang said indifferently, "You missed out one." Hearing this, Luo Qiangshu was stunned. Missed out one? If I didn't, how would you know? What did I miss out? At the age of 450, he was killed by Yang Tian. The corners of Tianyang's mouth pulled up, revealing an incomparably brilliant smile. Hearing this, Luo Qiangshu was instantly furious. "You're courting death." In the next moment, the broadsword in Luo Qiangshu's hand suddenly burned with an incomparably dazzling scarlet flame. Wu Zun's true origin burst out. He slashed out with his sword. Burning sea sky sword. Luo Qiangshu roared, and the scarlet flame soared into the sky like a pillar of light that connected the sky. And that sword, in the blink of an eye, arrived in front of Tianyang. It slashed down towards Tianyang's head. Ha ha ha! This time, Yang Tian is dead for sure. Yao Yaohui laughed wildly. When he heard that Yi Yuan had died at the hands of Tianyang, his heart immediately felt as if it had been struck by lightning, and he collapsed incomparably. His eldest senior brother, Yi Yuan, actually died in the burning sky fire vein. Died at the hands of Yang Tian? He could not accept it. Now, he felt that it did not matter whether he accepted it or not. After all, the murderer was about to die here. Give up your hands and feet. If you give up, you'll definitely die. If you don't, your reputation will be ruined. This Yang Tian dug a hole for himself and jumped into it. An old man shook his head and sighed. He was a cultivator at the 6th level of the Wuzun realm. He had lived in Dansynaville for thousands of years and had a high prestige. When the old man said this, countless people around immediately nodded. Even Elder Lu said so. It seems that this Yang Tian is dead for sure. However, if the Dragon Mountain Elder beside him makes a move, there might still be a chance. But with the current distance, even if the Dragon Mountain Elder makes a move, there's nothing he can do. Someone sighed. On the side, the expression of the CF family head, who was chatting happily with Jiang Lin, suddenly changed, and he revealed a smile that kept people 1,000 miles away. Quasi-alchemy Emperor Jiang, let's discuss the matter of cooperation later. Hearing that, Jiang Lin was stunned, then looked at the sky. Immediately, his expression changed drastically. How is this possible? Jiang Lin's expression changed drastically, and he looked at the sky in disbelief. Hearing that, the CF family head's expression also turned completely cold. This myriad pill ceremonies champion was really arrogant and conceited. Banten Simyun would definitely not sit idly by when he asked the Dragon Mountain Elder for help. Now, he was showing off. In the end, didn't he still die on the day of the myriad pill ceremony? I think there's no need to talk anymore. The CF family head did not even look at him. He said coldly and prepared to leave. Before he left, he glanced at the battle in the sky. A bloody mist filled the air. However, the person in the bloody mist was not the medicine god sex martial Dao guardian, Luo Qiangshu. It was Tianyang, and that bloody mist was Luo Qiangshu. Chapter 1084. Luo Qiangshu turned into a bloody mist and scattered into the world. Tianyang stood in midair, unharmed. What happened? In an instant, these 5 words surged into the minds of countless people. How could the medicine god sex martial Dao guardian, a peerless genius, Luo Qiangshu, turn into a bloody mist in the blink of an eye and die? And Tianyang, who was bound to die, suddenly changed places, right in the middle of the bloody mist? Below the sky where Tianyang stood, Yao Yaohui's eyes almost popped out as he stared fixedly at Tianyang in the sky with a calm expression and roared in disbelief. How is this possible? How is this possible? How can you be so powerful? Most people didn't see clearly what had happened before. However, Yao Yaoi saw it clearly. He saw it clearly. Just as Luo Qiangshu was about to attack, Tianyang made his move. He did not use his hands, nor did he use his feet. He had indeed given up his hands and feet. However, his true essence erupted to the extreme in that instant, and his speed soared to an incomparably terrifying level. He crashed fiercely towards Luo Qiangshu, who had not yet reacted. In an instant, Luo Qiangshu's solid body exploded into a bloody mist and scattered into the sky. He did not have the slightest chance to resist. Is this still the body of a human? Yao Yaohui's heart trembled, and his face was filled with fear. It was too terrifying. This terrifying physical body was like a divine weapon, and it should not have appeared on a rank 5 martial honorable realm young man's body. As for Elder Dragon Mountain, at this moment, he stared at Tianyang, who was bathed in the bloody mist but was clean and spotless. His pupils constricted to the extreme. As a peak half-saint, the things he could see and think of were much deeper than Yao Yaohui's. Yao Yaohui could only see that Tianyang's body was unbelievably powerful. However, the Dragon Mountain Elder was able to tell where Tianyang's physical body had come from. Dragon pattern. And it's a type of dragon pattern that I've never seen before, but it's incomparably pure. This young man is really from the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Mountain Elder's heart was in turmoil. On the surface, he was calm, but in his heart, a storm was brewing. If one were to say that the dragon power and dragon power that Tianyang had released before were just some untrustworthy proof, then the dragon power that Tianyang had released previously was just some unreliable proof. Then, the dragon mark that Tianyang displayed in an instant was irrefutable proof. The dragon marks were condensed on Tianyang's skin, but the source was in Tianyang's dantian. This was not something that any treasure could accomplish. As far as the Dragon Mountain Old Man knew, there was no martial skill that could accomplish this. From this point, one could see the pioneering actions of Crimson Dragon Wu Zun back then. When others cultivated the dragon body, they merely cultivated the dragon power, so that the power they could unleash would be comparable to that of the Dragon Clan. Even so, such a dragon body martial skill was extremely rare. If one could cultivate it to a certain level, its value would not be inferior to a sacred martial skill. On the other hand, Crimson Dragon Wu Zun's 9-tempered dragon body was only half complete. However, he had cultivated himself into a dragon. That's right, Crimson Dragon Wu Zun had created the 9-tempered dragon body to cultivate himself into a Dragon Clan member. That was why Tianyang had released such a terrifying dragon power when he had just started cultivating. However, in Tianyang's hands, it was different. Although Tianyang had followed Crimson Dragon Wu Zun's train of thought, he had still walked his own path. His source was still that of a pure-blooded human, but his physical body had the physical body of a Dragon Clan member. It was not as extreme as Crimson Dragon Wu Zun, but it was not weaker than Crimson Dragon Wu Zun at all. Therefore, even a peak half-saint like the Dragon Mountain Old Man could not see Tianyang's source. Instead, he had gone further and further with his own wrong guesses. Sigh, I never thought that with the pride of the Dragon Clan, they would lower themselves to participate in my Bantan Simeon's myriad pills ceremony. And my Bantan Simeon actually rejected this Dragon Clan pill Dao genius. The Dragon Mountain Old Man sighed, and his resentment towards Zhang Tianqua grew even deeper. If Zhang Tianqua had not interfered, this martial arts and pill Dao genius would have been taken in by the Dragon Mountain Old Man. Perhaps because the Dragon Mountain Old Man's status was extremely high, he would not have received any credit. However, Bantan Simeon would definitely become much stronger because of Tianyang. However, all of this was ruined because of Zhang Tianqua's stupidity. When I return to the sect, I will definitely report this to the Grand Elder. The Dragon Mountain Old Man gritted his teeth. At this moment in the sky, specks of light condensed in the blood mist, and Luo Qiangshu's ferocious face instantly condensed. Wu Zun was at the peak of the 6th level. Even if his physical body was smashed into a blood mist, he could still maintain his primordial spirit. Bastard! In the blood mist, even the grayish-yellow primordial spirit was tinged with a scarlet color. Luo Qiangshu's face was ferocious and filled with rage as he roared. You actually dared to destroy my physical body. Luo Qiangshu roared wildly. The hatred in his heart was already monstrous. He, the medicine god sect's martial Tao guardian, Wu Zun, was at the peak of the 6th level. He had touched upon a trace of the Saint Tao and was more than enough to step into the half-step Saint realm. Even if he was in the Saint realm, he still had a glimmer of hope. But now, after being hit by Tianyang, his physical body was destroyed. Even if his future in the martial Tao was not crippled, it was close. Even if he had the opportunity to recover his true essence, Luo Qiangshu could only stop at this stage for the rest of his life. "I want you to die," Luo Qiangshu roared wildly. The half-step saint artifact longsword that had not been destroyed suddenly appeared in his hand, and he slashed out. In an instant, a resplendent sword light tore through the sky and slashed down fiercely towards Tianyang. Tianyang smiled faintly and flicked his finger. A ray of light flew out from between his fingers. He effortlessly turned the slash into ashes. Wu Zun's primordial spirit at the peak of the 6th level should be a good tonic for a lesser saint alchemist. The corner of Tianyang's mouth curled up as he said. Hearing this, Luo Qiangshu's entire body trembled. "Save me," he finally realized. Tianyang's physical body could smash him into pieces. Then, how powerful was his primordial spirit? Moreover, Tianyang was the champion of the myriad pill ceremony. Evil creature, stop! At this moment, 3 figures suddenly appeared in the surrounding space. White hair fluttered in the wind. Wearing a grayish-white Taoist robe, they had the demeanor of an immortal. The aura of Wu Zun's 7th level on their bodies could not be concealed. In an instant, 3 Wu Zun's 7th level cultivators appeared. The 3 soaring serpent elders of the medicine god sect. Someone exclaimed. These were more terrifying existences than Luo Qiangshu. Luo Qiangshu was a rising star. As for the 3 soaring serpent elders, he was the sun that had already risen to the sky. Legend had it that the 3 elders of the soaring snake sect rarely made a move. Once they made a move, they would definitely take the enemy's head. The strongest one had even killed Wu Zun's 8th level cultivator. The 3 elders of the soaring snake sect have appeared. This time, no matter how strong Master Yang is, he will be defeated. Yao Yaohui's face suddenly revealed a sinister smile, and Luo Qiangshu also laughed wantonly. Again, Tianyang raised his eyebrows, then reached out and grabbed. Luo Qiangshu's primordial spirit appeared in his hand. "What are you doing?" At this moment, Luo Qiangshu finally realized that his life was still in Tianyang's control. "Nothing." Tianyang smiled slightly, raised his neck, and opened his mouth. The devouring heaven seal appeared. "How dare you?" Among the 3 elders of the soaring snake sect, an old man's pupils constricted. He roared and rushed towards Tianyang. "Replenish some energy." Crack! Luo Qiangshu fell into Tianyang's mouth. Chapter 1085. Devour. Crunch, crunch. It was as if the heavenly sun was really giving birth to the primordial spirit of the silk jade tree. Crisp sounds that made one's teeth ache continuously rang out. Everyone knew that primordial spirits couldn't be eaten and that this was just an illusion created by Tianyang. The real Luo Qiangshu had long been devoured by the strange black hole. Even so, they were still terrified. This wasn't a simple kill. It was a true cannibalism. Instead, he had eaten the strongest genius of the medicine god sect, the youngest protector of the medicine god sect, Luo Qiangshu, right in front of the 3 soaring serpent elders. Good, good, good. One of the 3 soaring serpent elders, who had rushed out, abruptly stopped. His expression was ferocious. Perhaps they didn't attach much importance to Luo Qiangshu, a guardian carefully cultivated by the medicine god sect. However, Tianyang had killed Luo Qiangshu right in front of them, and even devoured him. It was a resounding slap to their faces. "Second brother, third brother, attack. I like to see how capable this Yang Tian is to attack us in front of us." The leader of the 3 soaring serpent elders' expression was extremely dark. In the next moment, he disappeared on the spot. Earlier, Tianyang had killed Luo Qiangshu, who was Wuzun's peak 6th stage, with a single charge. Even if Luo Qiangshu had underestimated his opponent, it still represented Tianyang's strength. In the face of such an existence, none of the 3 soaring serpent elders would be able to win against Tianyang. Moreover, what they wanted to do wasn't just to defeat Tianyang. They wanted to capture Tianyang, then use the most vicious method to suppress Tianyang for eternity to avenge the humiliation he had given them. This Yang Tian is really courting death. The Xie clan patriarch, who had just broken down, was now full of disdain. So what if he killed Luo Qiangshu? With the 3 soaring serpent elders here, if it were me, I would immediately kneel down and beg for mercy. I might even be able to survive. Devouring Luo Qiangshu infuriated the 3 soaring serpent elders. When enraged, even Wuzun, who is at the peak of the 7th level, is no match for the 3 soaring serpent elders. The champion of the myriad pill ceremony is going to die here. The head of the Xie family laughed coldly. His previous regret was washed away in an instant. Now, he was still incomparably proud of his decision to immediately cut ties with the Alchemy Saint City. The strongest of the 3 elders, Tung Qingshan, is at the 7th level of Wuzun's realm. His strength is close to the peak. The other 2, Tung Wuqing and Tung Guishuo, also possess incomparably powerful strength. Any one of these 3 could easily kill Yang Tian, not to mention that the 3 of them are working together. Yao Yaohui's face was filled with excitement. This guy, who had been slapping the medicine god Sek's face ever since he appeared in Dancineville, could finally die here. The day the myriad pill ceremony ends will be the day you, the champion of the myriad pill ceremony, die. Tung Qingshan laughed coldly. In the next moment, a scepter appeared in his hand. At the tip of the scepter was a ferocious snakehead. Its eyes flickered with a strange light. In the next moment, a bright light shot out from the scepter. Soaring serpent's eye. Tung Qingshan roared, and Wuzun's realm 7th level true origin exploded. At the side, Tung Wuqing and Tung Guishuo also suddenly burst into action. One of them held a long spear and charged toward Tianyang. One of them had a pair of hands that seemed to stretch out like a shadow, reaching for the heavenly sun. The 3 of them each took a position. They surrounded Tianyang, facing the soaring serpent's eye, which was glowing with a pale green light. Tianyang's lips curled into a subtle smile. You want to deal with me with this kind of ability? In the next moment, Tianyang's hand flashed, and a dragon tattoo appeared. In the blink of an eye, Tianyang's figure disappeared from the spot. A terrifying dragon's aura bloomed from Tianyang's body. Art of the 9 Heavens Emperor Dragon. Divine Dragon Emperor Fist. In just a breath, Tianyang unleashed 2 killer moves. They merged into one and blasted toward the soaring serpent's eye. Boom! A terrifying sound rang out. Rolling dragon power crushed the pale green light into ashes. In the next moment, Tianyang used the 10,000 Paths movement technique and disappeared again. He appeared in front of Tung Wuqing. Oh no! Tung Wuqing's expression changed. He did not expect Tianyang to be so fast. He immediately waved the long spear in his hand and counterattacked. However, Tianyang seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He kicked back and neutralized the fierce attack. Tung Wuqing even had the illusion that he had hit a steel pillar. At this moment, Tianyang punched again. Divine Dragon Emperor Fist. Boom! This punch did not have the slightest bit of defense. It directly hit Tung Wuqing's head. Tung Wuqing spat out blood and flew backward like a cannonball. His entire face was dented by this punch. If Wuzun's body was not strong enough, Tung Wuqing's punch would not have hit him. Just like Luo Qiangshu, Tung Wuqing's head would have been smashed into a bloody mist by Tianyang's punch. With the 3 of us working together, so what if we can deal with 2 people? At this moment, a sharp and old laugh was heard. Thousands of infinitely elongated arms, like ghostly tentacles, grabbed toward Tianyang. Ghostly Shadow Strike, Tung Wuqing's famous ultimate move. Phew! Seeing this, the Xie family head who had been worried about Tung Wuching and Tung Wuching's quick defeat, could not help but sigh in relief. I thought Yang Tian was really so powerful that he could deal with the 3 soaring serpent elders. Now it seems that he is just SOSO. Tung Wuching's ghostly shadow strike was actually successful. The Xie family head sneered. Tung Wuching is the weakest among the 3 soaring serpent elders. This is because his move requires a long time to prepare. However, once it is successfully executed, Tung Wuching will completely unleash a terrifying power that far surpasses anything. The Ghost Hand Shadow Strike, when used, can shake the heavens and shake the earth. Back then, Wu Zun, who was in the 8th realm, died under the ghostly shadow strike. The Xie family head sneered. Hearing this, Jin Daoping, Wu Qingchun, and Zhang Lin could not help but glare at the Xie family head angrily. Just a few minutes ago, this guy was still discussing a cooperation with them. Now, not only did he immediately stop, he even made sarcastic remarks about Tianyang. The Xie family head did not care about Zhang Lin and the others at all. So what if he was a quasi-alchemy emperor? Once Tianyang died, Dan Sinovil's newly elevated status would return to its original state. At that time, who would care about an alchemy force that came from outside the Eastern Divine Land? Die! Tung Guisho uttered a roar as the thousands of ghastly hands surrounded the heavenly sun as if they had grown sharp fangs. Once bound, then even Wu Zun, who was in the 8th realm, would die. I thought there would be some tricks. In the end, it's just this. At this time, only a long sigh was heard. What a waste of time. The power of the holy Tao replaced the dragon aura and bloomed on Tianyang's body. No one saw when the sword in Tianyang's hand appeared. They only saw streaks of sword light bloomed on the pitch-black, ghostly hands. In the next moment, Chapter 1086, the dazzling sword light was like the most beautiful fireworks in the world. Another flash. 10,000 mammoth annihilation. How is this possible? Patriarch Xie was the first to jump up and yell in disbelief. How is this possible? How can a 5th stage Wu Zun break through the ghost claw that could kill an 8th stage Wu Zun? This is definitely fake. Fake. The head of the Xie family roared. His eyes were filled with fear. Previously, he had made so many sarcastic remarks about the alchemy Saint City. That was because he thought that the overall situation was already decided. That was why he spoke so arrogantly. After all, it was already a miracle that a 5th stage Wu Zun could kill Luo Qiangshu, who was a peak 6th stage Wu Zun. How was it possible that he could deal with 3 7th stage Wu Zun cultivators? But that was the truth. Tianyang's sword had turned the situation around. It could be called a fatal blow. He could even imagine the people of Dan Sinoville saying a few more words to Tianyang. Tianyang didn't even need to do anything. Those fans could kill him with a single finger. It's definitely fake. The 3 soaring serpent elders are famous experts. How could they be defeated so easily? Patriarch Xie yelled. They were famous martial Tao elders of the Medicine God sect. They could be said to be the strongest martial Tao fighters in the Medicine God sect. The Medicine God sect wasn't a sage sect. Their strongest fighters were only peak half-sages. Peak half-sages weren't the strongest either. Compared to Elder Dragon Mountain, they were thousands of miles away. It could be said that the 3 soaring serpent elders were the strongest fighters the Medicine God sect could bring out. When Luo Qiangshu appeared, everyone thought that the Medicine God school had sent him out because they were blinded by anger. Luo Qiangshu was a martial Tao genius and could easily kill a pill Tao genius. After Luo Qiangshu was killed and the 3 soaring serpent elders appeared, everyone still thought that the Medicine God sect had used a sledgehammer to crack a nut. The 3 soaring serpent elders were a formidable force that could fight Wu Zun if they joined forces. Any rank 5 martial honored realm martial artist would be able to kill him in an instant. But now, Tung Qingshan, the head of the 3 soaring serpent elders, was sent flying by the punch. The second was Tung Wuqing. His spear was kicked away, and his face was punched, causing him to fall to the ground with heavy injuries. Even Tung Guisho, The number one hidden person who was most likely to save the situation had his strongest trump card easily destroyed by Tianyang. The three soaring serpent elders are only SOSO. The corners of Tianyang's mouth lifted, revealing a faint smile. The three soaring serpent elders were quite strong. Unfortunately, Tianyang had now comprehended the sage realm Sword Tao, the Tao of creation and destruction, the sacred Tao of all creations, and the Sage Realm Alchemy Tao. For Sage Realm Great Taos, in terms of cultivation, Tianyang did not lose to any Wuzun. In terms of physical strength, although Tianyang's body of the Dragon King had not reached great success, he could still easily destroy any 6th-stage Wuzun. If combined with other techniques, even Luo Qiangshu would be killed in one hit. In terms of true origin, Tianyang might not be strong, but true origin was the foundation of everything. With the endless spirit sea as the foundation, his primordial spirit, physical body, and great Taos could unleash the strongest techniques. It could be said that Tianyang could defeat the three soaring serpent elders in any aspect. So what if they could fight against Wuzun if they joined forces? First, they had to join forces. Cough, cough. Tung Guisho couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood after the ghostly hand shadow strike was broken. He looked at Tianyang in disbelief. His signature move was at the level of a half-saint martial artist. Even Wuzun would not be able to break it so easily. How did Tianyang kill him in an instant? Oh no. However, Tung Guisho's doubts only lasted for less than a second. In the next moment, Tung Guisho came to his senses and dashed behind him. Tianyang could easily kill Tung Qingshan and Tung Wuqing. Although he had powerful techniques, his combat strength was not very strong. If he fell into Tianyang's hands, he would be doomed. The information is wrong. Yao Yaohui is really a piece of trash. Tung Guisho's face was filled with rage as he glared at Yao Yaohui, who was in the crowd. All the information about Tianyang had been provided to the Medicine God sect by Yao Yaohui. The Medicine God sect had also made the plan to kill Yi Futian based on the information provided by Yao Yaohui. After all, according to the Medicine God sect's investigation, Yi Yuan was definitely killed by Tianyang. If the Medicine God sect did not take revenge, how could they continue to stay in the eastern Sky Divine Land? However, as soon as he arrived, the strength that Tianyang displayed was completely different from what Yao Yaohui had reported. They were two different people. Tung Guisho did not understand Yao Yaohui and naturally did not know how narrow-minded he was. In the report, he had used derogatory words. Tung Guisho had really thought that Tianyang was that strong. In the end, he had ruined his own life. Trying to escape? Seeing Tung Guisho shoot out like a shooting star, Tianyang's face showed a trace of amusement. Have you never fought me before, or are you out of your mind? Do you think you can run away? Tianyang chuckled, and in the next moment, his figure flashed. Secret art of air treading. Myriad movement technique. Two incomparably powerful movement techniques, at this moment, burst forth with incomparably terrifying speed. In an instant, he turned into a streak of light and attacked Tung Guisho. Damn it! Seeing this, Tung Guisho's expression changed drastically. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of dark green blood. Soaring snakes, 6 transformations. A sharp roar sounded. In the next moment, Tung Guisho's body suddenly changed. His body was covered in dark green and dark green. 2 strange, fleshy wings suddenly grew out of his back. With a flap of the wings, he instantly exploded with terrifying speed. Legend has it that the soaring snake can ride the clouds and is extremely fast. Looks like it's true. Tianyang looked at Tung Guisho, who had shot out a large distance in an instant, and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. The 3 elders of the soaring snake were really related to the soaring snake. However, your soaring snake is too ugly. Tianyang smiled slightly. In the next moment, a bright light suddenly flashed in his eyes. I'm afraid you can't outrun my dragon. In an instant, the dragon power was released. A dragon's roar resounded through the sky. Its speed was so fast that it could not be seen with the naked eye. In a few breaths, it had caught up with Tung Guisho. What? Seeing this, Tung Guisho was instantly scared out of his wits. He looked at Tian Yang behind him in disbelief. He had already displayed the soaring snake's 6 changes. How could Tung Guisho keep up with him? Sect leader, save me. Tung Guisho roared, and a token suddenly flew out from his hand. The token exploded in midair, and in the next moment, it turned into a huge light screen. On the light screen, a man who exuded an imposing aura was sitting on top of it. Seeing this, the crowd could not help but gasp. A sage-to-be,